1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 1st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 14. Some light snow. It's minus 12 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Very latest from the Russian invasion of Ukraine includes an emotional speech to the European Parliament from the Ukrainian leader. Here's City News reporter Jamie Pulfer with the very latest.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky got a standing ovation from diplomats as he remotely addressed the European Parliament, emotionally telling those EU leaders that his country is fighting for survival. That's the highest motivation, to see their children live.
Life will win over death, and light will win over darkness. Glory be to Ukraine.
Zelensky says we are fighting also to be equal members of Europe, and I believe today we are showing everybody that's exactly what we are, requesting Ukraine be added to the EU on an expedited process. CNN's Christian Amanpour says Zelensky is showing he will not leave his people at the most dire moment in European history since the end of World War II. And she talks about the wild juxtaposition that's playing out.
As this brave president does that in an encircled and perhaps soon to be besieged capital city, you have the Russian foreign minister talking to the UN in the safety of his foreign ministry in Moscow and lying again about who Zelensky is, calling him a neo-Nazi.
Now, fears now of what's coming as Russia ramps it up, making an alarming push toward Ukraine's capital with an intimidating convoy bearing down on Kiev, a convoy more than 60 kilometers long. So far, Russian forces have not taken a major city. The fear, though, is they may overcompensate with a more brutal campaign. And this comes after Freedom Square in central Kharkiv, Ukraine's second largest city, was hit by 2 Russian missiles, taking out a key government building, leaving many dead, dozens injured today. A daylight attack with people out on the streets described as undisguised terror. This comes after attacks using cluster bombs in Kharkiv yesterday. 16 children killed, according to Ukraine's president. Russia is being accused of war crimes and crimes against humanity after targeting civilians. Jamie Pulfer, City News.
Now more on what you can do if you want to help coming up. But first, City News Time 9:02, your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll have snow for a good portion of the day. It should come to an end around 6 o'clock this evening. The high -7, -15 for the low. Both those temperatures well below average. Tomorrow, sun and cloud for the morning, then some light snow, but about 2 centimeters for tomorrow, not as much as today. For today, the high -7.
And right now in Ottawa, -14. In Smiths Falls, it's -12. Now, there are many ways you can help those Ukrainians affected by this unfolding crisis. Here's City News reporter Prushka Gobelkista.
Canada Helps is a national organization aiming to provide relief for Ukrainians on the ground. Jacob O'Connor explains if you're not so familiar with how charities work, he says donating through the site's Crisis Relief Center is a good place to start.
You want to take action, and this is something that you can do, but you're not really familiar with charities, you can go to CanadaHelps.org, you can search for them, and you can kind of do your homework in that way. So that would be the same case for all of the different organizations that are currently listed on the Crisis Relief Center.
He adds that there is a monthly payment option, which he says could be much easier, especially for those on a budget. Prushka Gopalkista, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Hey, and just like that, it's March. Shrove Tuesday, Mardi Gras. Tomorrow's the first day of Lent for the faithful who observe such things. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. We're always so happy when you decide to spend some of your day with us. Great show coming up. Big day in the province of Ontario. It's reopening day. Reopening day. Hey, stop me if you've heard that one before. Reopening day in the province of Ontario. We'll see. Maybe they really mean it this time. Capacity limits. The vaccine passport all ends today. Everything but the mask mandate basically is going away. I hope it lasts. I hope it's for real this time. It is happening sooner than it was originally supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to happen until the middle of March, but it was accelerated. It was moved up by 2 weeks, and here we are. And the accusation from the critics of the Ford government down at Queen's Park is that Ford caved to the protesters, that the protesters who were camped out in Ottawa, the protesters who blockaded the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, Doug Ford caved to them, and that's why we are where we are. And whether there's any truth to that, I don't know. We are where we are, and hopefully we can stay here. And the mask mandate will also end sooner rather than later. The Premier suggested yesterday the mask mandate might end sometime after the March break.
Right from the get-go, I'm listening to the chief medical officer. It's his advice when they're going to come off, and we'll wait for his advice and recommendations. And once he gives the recommendations, we'll be able to move forward. What I'm hearing over the next few weeks, maybe after March break, when the kids get back, but we'll see. I don't want to set a date, and there's no secret. There isn't a person I talk to likes these masks. No one likes them, but I'm going to follow the advice, and we aren't far away.
All right, not far away, but not going to be pigeonholed into offering a date. So, look, we're all over this story today. Dr. Vera Etches, Ottawa's Chief Medical Officer of Health. I had a chance to speak with her this morning about where we are in this city with COVID-19 and what she thinks about lifting these restrictions today. I have to say, she struck a very cautious tone this morning. That interview is coming up in just a few minutes from now, as a matter of fact. Then a little later in the show, the business point of view. Tanya Hill is back with us, owner of the Tappa Salon in the Carlingwood Mall. She's been on the program from time to time over the last 2 years. She's also president of the Ontario Professional Hairstylists Association. At her salon in the Carlingwood Mall, this is the first time that her business has been allowed to be fully open in 2 years. Can you imagine? They were closed when everything closed back in March of 2020, and her business has never been allowed to fully reopen ever since. How's that for a hard-hit industry? 32,000 professional hairstylists in Ontario facing that kind of predicament. So needless to say, she's pretty excited about today, but she told me it's going to take a lot of people to, get used to going back to places like hair salons. Because each and every time the government locks you down, what it does is it basically paints your establishment as being somehow, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to go get your hair done by a hairstylist. I've heard similar complaints from people who own restaurants. So we'll talk to her, and also on this grand reopening day, Ching from the Ottawa Board of Trade, president of the Ottawa Board of Trade, and if I recall correctly, her first day on the job was the day that the pandemic was declared. Holy smokes. The pandemic was declared the 11th of March, 2020, her first day on the job. Congratulations, you're the president of the Ottawa Board of Trade. There's a global infectious disease pandemic and all the businesses have to close. Good luck to you. Coming up after the 9:30 news, it's the professor. Ian Lee is an associate professor of management at the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. He's with us every week on Tuesday mornings, and I think it's going to be even extra special today. Professor Lee is taught all over Eastern Europe. He goes to Poland. He has a teaching gig in Poland every year. I knew that, but I did not know until he told me this morning. He has taught many times in Ukraine, and he's taught several times in Moscow. And he's been to Romania, Czech Republic, Estonia, Lithuania. So all around the region. So it's going to be interesting to get his perspective on everything that's unfolding with Russia and Ukraine right now. Gosh, I don't know about you. The news is hard to watch sometimes. It really is. And I just have a feeling that we are not even close to seeing the worst of this yet. I hate to say that so early in the morning. After watching the Ukrainians continue to put up this valiant fight against this invading army. But you listen to the reports about Putin and you see all the terrible pictures and videos of the shelling and the bombing, and you see this parade of military hardware 65 kilometers long, and now the Russians are starting to use more air power. Lots of questions about what's planned for cyber attacks. I mean, it could get really bad. It could get really bad. And I know I'm not alone in wondering if Vladimir Putin is even rational or if he's even in his right mind. But there are so many moving parts to this. Professor Lee will offer his take on it all right after the 9:30 news. I mean, one of the really interesting angles is what this has done to German politics. In a week, German politics has turned 180 degrees in just a week. Germany has basically been a pacifist state since the end of the Second World War. Now it's agreed to send 1,000 anti-tank weapons and 500 Stinger missiles to Ukraine. And in addition to that, the new German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, announced that his government will spend 100 billion euros this year to modernize the German army. 100 billion euros. Overnight, the German government decided to double spending on national defense. And it didn't want to suspend permitting that Russian pipeline Nord Stream 2, but it did. I mean, all of it is a series of incredible events, and we'll talk about them all with Professor Joan DeBardeleben, expert in European and Russian affairs, also with Carleton University. All of this happening today while the American President Joe Biden gets ready for his State of the Union address, the mother of all speeches, and we just happen to have a former speechwriter on the show every Tuesday morning. Michael Taube, syndicated columnist. You can read him this week in the National Post. He's a former speechwriter for Stephen Harper. We're going to talk about Joe Biden's speech tonight and his column this week in the Post about Justin Trudeau. Michael is not a fan of Prime Minister Trudeau. No, he is not. We'll do the talkback hour this morning, as we do each and every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. An hour of phone calls, an hour of opinions at 750-1310. I want to talk about the grand reopening. I mean, we've all been here before, and it hasn't lasted. But this is the closest we have been to whatever normal is going to be for a long time. It's been many, many months dealing with the spread of Omicron. So I want to get into this today with kind of a what if. Once more, the government came to you and said, just one more time, we need to go through this again because, you know, there's a new variant. High case counts, packed hospitals. What if the government came to you and said, folks and friends, we don't want to, but we need to impose public health restrictions again because of COVID-19. How would you react to that? I hope it doesn't come to that and that we're moving on to better days, but we still need to talk about it anyway on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, record center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad saying, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats every day. Jesus Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hintonburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I went, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store is about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed, and essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. You'll come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Most of the pandemic-related health restrictions are ending today, including capacity limits for most businesses and the need for businesses to require proof of vaccination, but the mask mandate remains in place. So let's talk about it. Dr. Vera Etches is Ottawa's Chief Medical Officer of Health and is back with us on City News this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
How are you feeling about moving into this final phase again?
Well, we have seen people, of course, do their part in going out to be vaccinated, especially with that third dose. That's going to help protect people from serious illness. And we've seen the hospitalizations come down. Our wastewater has been trending downwards. So the trends are in a good place to be able to keep taking these steps that increase the opportunity for COVID transmission. Things have slowed a bit in the decline over the last week. We've seen that across Ontario as well as here in Ottawa. So I do think as we proceed, I would continue to ask people to do their own risk assessment because some people will still encounter Omicron. It's not finished. The wave is not back to where it was before it started. We have a higher level of Omicron still. And so for people who are older, people who are immunocompromised, we want people to know there's a time of transition here. There's got to be a respect for individuals to continue to be cautious, to use distance, to choose to gather where there aren't large crowds. There are still measures we can use to decrease our risk of transmission.
Sure. It's happening sooner than the original plan by about 2 weeks. It was accelerated by about 2 weeks. How comfortable are you with that?
As I say, I think we still see the trends are positive in that our hospitals have fewer people. They're coping well. I think that was always the concern of what pressure our hospitals were under, and we'll continue to watch that. I'm in contact regularly with the hospitals, and they're able to get back to the procedures they need to do, the surgeries and scans and things that they had to pause. So this is good. We're still on a good track.
Okay, what do you think about keeping the mask mandate in place? The Premier said yesterday it might end, but not now, maybe after the March break. What do you think about that? Mask mandate still in place?
I do think we need some time, a few weeks at least, to take a look at what's happening as everything opens up to full capacity and people are closer together and there's bigger groups. And Omicron transmission, we could expect will go up. It's a question of how much and will it cause serious illness. So I think the masks are a defense that people have learned to use and many people are very comfortable with, that we can continue to use as one step that's still there to slow COVID transmission. I think you hear people saying we may need to use masks more in the future. So even if we're still on a good path, the Omicron is still decreasing after this reopening transition. I think there is certainly other countries that are making the decision to let the masks go. But I would say, for now, we need to always reach for those tools that will help us avoid having to use stronger measures, right? Nobody wants to go back to closures.
Yeah, I was thinking locally here, for example, because you do have some authority as the top public health official. What do you think, let's say, by the end of the month, the province says the mask mandate is over? What about, say, something like OC Transpo, for example, getting onto OC Transpo, riding the bus, taking the train, whatever the case might be? Would you be okay with no masks on public transit, for example, Dr. Etches?
So I think there's quite a few ifs there. We're not sure what the province is going to do. They may actually decide that there are some settings like public transit where they want to ensure that masks are used a bit longer. Again, it's going to depend on the epidemiology and the trends in the Omicron. It was a city council that implemented a local bylaw, so I think they would need to consider whether that was justified again based on the levels of illness. And it's the severe illness, of course, that people are monitoring the most to make sure that people aren't ending up in hospital and intensive care units. So I think that one I can't really say at this point because it will be based on what we're seeing.
At the time. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we've been here before, and it's kind of like Lucy with the football, and she keeps pulling it away, but poor Charlie keeps trying to kick it. It's a tough roller coaster to be on for a lot of people. So how can we maximize our chances of never having to go back into some form of lockdown, restricted pandemic era again?
Certainly what we see is that the vaccination has made a difference. This Omicron peak, we had a lot of COVID in the community, a lot, and it did lead to severe illness. We did have, at the population level, mortality rates that were, almost, second to the very beginning in April of 2020. But it would have been a lot worse if older adults and our population had not been immunized. And so we need to continue to follow the science on what vaccine doses are used and recommended. Right now, I'm still strongly recommending that third booster dose. And for people over 60, even over 50, your chances of severe illness go up. And we still have, 25,000 people over 60 who had 2 doses, but they haven't come around to get their third dose. So I would, again, strongly recommend that third dose does actually help decrease transmission as well by 60%. So that's something that can be added in, stronger protection. We are out there in neighborhoods. Actually, the province is calling people who haven't come for that third dose. So we're not giving up on increasing our level of protection from vaccination. And then, again, people will make their own decisions about how comfortable they are given their health and the health of people they're close to. But we always have the choice to decrease the number of people we're in contact with from, going from a crowd to family gatherings. I think people can choose fewer close contacts. But I do want to say that it is important to gather with people. So you mentioned how hard it is going back and forth and the changing situation. We know this has taken a toll, and part of the antidote to that is social connection. So I do want to see people enabling their children to play with other families again if they've been holding off. I do want to see people connecting and enjoying that ability to get together. For those who are more vulnerable, continuing to gather outside. These are options that will get easier and easier, of course, as the spring comes.
Okay. My mother used to say, bad news comes in threes. I don't know if you're familiar with the bad news comes in threes.
Right.
So we've had 2 years of a pandemic. Then we had a month's worth of protest. And now we have war all over the news. So it's very overwhelming for a lot of people, and a lot of people may be struggling already with mental health through all of this. Well, what's your advice to people? It's a very stressful time in the world right now. What's your advice as the medical officer of health?
I agree with you, Rob. This is a stressful time, and it's coming on top, as you said, of 2 years worth of stress. So Ottawa Public Health does have information we're promoting about how to respond to stressful events. The first thing on the list is to spend time with friends and family. So again, I want people to understand this is part of how we're going to proceed and get our well-being back, is to connect with others. It's to keep your routines. So keep the routines of having your family meals. It's to look to things that you can do that would keep you busy without focusing on the news, on social media, not looking at your phone all the time. But, if you're working, that can keep you busy and distracted. If you can volunteer and help someone in your community, these are positive ways that we can handle stress. Certainly talking about our feelings is important. And for children, they look to us as adults about what's happening. They'll have questions. We want to create spaces for children to talk, but also using age-appropriate language. So we don't want to be scaring children, and so listening, hearing their fears or anxieties, you can definitely say, as an adult to children too, that you've got some concerns and what you're going to focus on to help each other keep your routine, go through the day. But if you are really finding you can't get to work, you can't concentrate on your job, you're having difficulty caring for children, these are red flags. Okay. If you're having feelings of sadness that go on day after day, then we also want you to know there's counseling available. There's a distress center. Certainly, if you're reaching that level, people are there to listen and help connect you to better supports. So children, too. There are services for children and youth. So that's an important message for people that services exist. There are phone numbers on our website that you can call, and then real people who will provide counseling.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. Very generous today, Dr. Etches. Thank you.
Now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 1st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, snowing and minus 14 in Ottawa, minus 11 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Ukraine's president addressed the European Parliament today, saying he will not leave his country, adding, "This is a fight for the land of Ukraine and the freedom of its people." President Zelensky making the speech as Russian troops close in on the capital of Kiev. The top doctor in Ottawa, Vera Etches, says she approves of the lifting of some vaccine or some COVID measures today across Ontario. She tells the Rob Snow Show they are continuing to monitor things, though, like hospitalizations, but the declining COVID case count means we can ease restrictions like vaccine passports and capacity limits today. But OPH will be keeping a close eye on the COVID infection rates. Ottawa Fire Service put out a bedroom fire this morning in a Hazeldean home. No injuries were reported, but the service says this fire was caused by a gaming charger that overheated. It reminds people they really should have a smoke detector not only on every floor in their home, but in every bedroom. City News Time 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And we're back with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Management at Carleton University. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
So why don't we just begin with some general commentary from you on your impressions of this war effort so far. What have you thought of what you have seen?
And I will fully disclose, I didn't expect him to invade and start a war in Ukraine. Over the years, in media interviews, I've characterized him publicly and in my class as a murderer. Because he has murdered, had opposition members murdered, people, dissidents outside, and including in the UK. So it was an empirically correct statement. It wasn't, an unfair comment. And I said he's a thug, but I thought he was a rational thug, because thugs and murderers can be very rational. And I think they often are. Not that I know any, but just observing them, as we all do, from time to time, because they get into the news. And so I was taken aback, and I don't feel so badly for misjudging it, because all the German elite, and they know Putin way better than I do. I've never met Putin, and the entire German elite, certainly in the SPD, that's the party now in power. It's sort of between the NDP and the Liberals, ideologically speaking. And for that matter, Chancellor Merkel, the leader of the Conservative Party, the CDU in Germany, completely misjudged him. And in fact, reading the German media over the last 5 days in translation, they're just going through, they're just pointing fingers at each other, and they're just tearing themselves apart. How did we go so wrong? How did we misjudge Russia for the last 50 years? So they're going through a real coming to Jesus moment in Germany, and it's completely reoriented their policy. So let me go bigger picture, not to at all minimize what's going on there, because it's an absolutely unspeakable tragedy. And what's happening to these are civilians, these are children, these are families that are being murdered under Putin's orders. And there's increasing evidence that he has committed war crimes using thermobarbaric, I call it thermobarbaric device. It's thermobaric, and they're essentially gigantic, extremely sophisticated flamethrowers, sort of napalm on steroids times a million, and it's designed to kill human beings, not soldiers. Designed to kill civilians. It's very illegal, as I understand it, under the Geneva rules. But beyond that, the bigger picture, Rob, is I never doubted that if they really did get serious on sanctions, knowing what I know about banking and payment systems, that if they ever did, and they never have until now, and I mean they, the U.S., Germany, Europe, the world, that if they ever did get serious, I never had any doubt that it would bring the Russian economy to its knees, because I'm evidence-based, and anybody who looks at numbers is. The U.S. and European Union GDP are about $22 trillion each, expressed in U.S. dollars. Japan's on board, and some other countries, most of the countries of the world. You add them up, it's about $50 trillion of GDP. I'm using that as my proxy, my measure, my indicator of relative power.
Sure.
Russia, people don't realize this because they see this great, big, gigantic country, geographically speaking. It's got 5,000 or 6,000 nuclear warheads. They think it's a big, powerful superpower. Russia's GDP is $1.48 trillion. It is smaller than the state of Texas GDP. It is smaller than Canada's GDP. It is smaller than the state of South Korea's GDP. Now, imagine if, it's a crazy thought experiment, imagine if Europe and the U.S. and the world decided to go after Canada with all of its financial digital might. Does anybody believe that we could stand that onslaught? And we're bigger than Russia, remember. Leave out the nukes. I'm just talking the impact of sanctions. And we have a much more diversified economy that's much more productive per worker than is Russia. And we don't have, we have very small levels of corruption according to the Transparency International Index. Russia's massively corrupt in the bottom third of countries. And so there's people saying, oh, sanctions won't work. That's nonsense. Of course they'll work. We're seeing it in real time. It crashed the ruble. And Russia is a cold country like Canada. You cannot grow lettuce or cucumbers in a snowbank in January in Moscow or in Ottawa. That's why, guess what? We import a lot of food. So does Russia. Well, if the currency goes down by 20, 30, 40, 50%, that means your cost of food is going through the roof. The average, the GDP per capita of Russia, to put that into ordinary terms we all understand, is $10,000 per person per year U.S. dollars. Canada's about $50,000 when you just take total GDP divided by the population. But even that's misleading, because Russia is a highly unequal country. We natter on about a terrible inequality in Canada, which is absolute statistical nonsense. Canada's inequality between top and bottom is almost smack dab on the OECD average of the European countries and the other members of the OECD. Russia is wildly unequal, meaning the people at the top are unbelievably rich and the people at the bottom are unbelievably poor. I've read that the average Russian, and this is from a Russian economist I read just in the last 24 hours, the average Russian makes $3,000 per year, U.S. dollars. That's their income. Okay, that's not very much money. And now the ruble has collapsed. And it's not going to go back up because Russia's been cut out of the payment system. That means they're going to have a tough time importing anything because you can't pay for your imports. You can't pay for imports because foreign reserves have been frozen. The Central Bank of Russia had its foreign currencies on deposit with Federal Reserve, with the Bank of England, the European Central Bank. I won't get into the weeds on this, but suffice to say that essentially money and assets are digitized today. We don't carry sacks and bags of cash around anymore. Yeah. Everything is transferred digitally, and central banks have swap accounts with other central banks. So the Bank of Canada has foreign exchange reserves on deposit with the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve has deposits on with the European Central Bank, and so on and so forth. And they all work together, and we all cooperate, and everything's hunky-dory.
Yeah.
And then they decided, no, we're going to shut down the Russian central bank of this country that's 1.5, in round numbers, 1.5 trillion.
Right.
Well,
so they can't get those foreign reserves. They have a difficult time
my
getting.
My point is that and everything I'm reading, and this is by Russian economists in Russia who are brave enough to go on the record, as well as some in London, they said it's only going to cascade downward. There's going to be banks that fail in Russia. There's going to be a lot of companies failing. I've seen estimates of the decline in GDP ranging. The most generous decline was only 5% decline, which is still very serious.
Yeah.
I've seen estimates of 20% and 30% decline. That's a 30% decline in your GDP means 1/3 of your economy vanishes. 1/3.
Right.
So my point is, now, having said that, before
no foreign investment. Who's going to do business there?
All the foreign companies are heading for the exit.
You see, BP the day before yesterday, British Petroleum the day before yesterday, so we're walking away from our stake in the big pipeline.
The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund has walked away.
Royal
Dutch Shell has walked away.
Right.
France, Total, a huge oil and gas company in France, has walked away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. And again, I've been to Russia. I taught there 3 times. I've been to Ukraine over 30 times throughout the 90s and the early part of the 21st century, the first decade.
Wow.
And where I'm going with this, what I want to tell you or tell your listeners is, this is not Afghanistan, these countries. This is not Somalia. Not that I've been there, but, we know they're failed states at the bottom. But anyone who thinks that they have a technological and financial and capacity somewhat similar to a Western country like Canada or UK or Germany just doesn't understand what's going on there. Germany is overwhelmingly dependent on oil and gas and resources. They do not have a diversified economy. There's enormous levels of corruption in Russia, which creates enormous economic inefficiency. So where am I going with this? They have been heavily dependent on foreign capital and foreign technological expertise. That's why BP was there. That's why Royal Dutch Shell was there. Contrary to the stereotypes by environmentalists that portray minerals and resource development as very low-tech, old-tech, they don't have a clue. Resource development has become extraordinarily sophisticated, using artificial intelligence, using all kinds of extraordinary cutting-edge technologies. It's very capital-intensive. It's very knowledge and expertise-intensive to go and extract oil or gas or minerals in hostile environments in the north. Russia needs Western technology, needs Western expertise and Western capital. All of that has been cut off. And so it's only going to get worse. Now, before it sounds like I'm saying it's a slam dunk for the West, you've got this, it's surreal. Russia has overwhelming superiority in Ukraine. They're going to slaughter the Ukrainians. So you've got this double-edged movement going on, if you think really big picture. On the one hand, on the military side, even though they've been set back because of the ferocious and brave resistance of all the Ukrainians, they're so overwhelmed. So Russia's going to start moving from victory to victory as they destroy and murder and kill more and more Ukrainians. So they're going to have more and more success militarily, while simultaneously their Russian economy is collapsing. And so you say, this is just extraordinary. Normally you have a very strong country, a very strong economy, very strong military. Here you're going to have the military side is going to be more and more successful, if I can use that horrible word in this context, meaning they're going to be more and more successful at dominating and destroying Ukraine, at the same time that their economy is collapsing. And anyone who thinks that it's not going to continue to get worse doesn't understand the extent of the sanctions. They've been cut off from all Western capital, all Western expertise. The Western companies are leaving. The central bank's assets are frozen. The ruble is collapsing. Inflation is going through the roof.
Yeah, they upped their interest rates to 20%.
From 9.5.
Yeah.
We're crying because the interest rates in Canada this year might go up 1/4 of 1 point, maybe 3/4 of 1 point. They went up in one jump, 10.5%. And again, this is going to just ruin small businesses. They've got small businesses there too. So what I'm suggesting is, I think there's a tipping point coming. I don't know when. I don't mean in 10 or 20 years. I mean in the near future. Will they destroy Ukraine more quickly than the Russian economy collapses? they're going in two different directions. And you know, the latest, the European Parliament, as we speak, or was a couple hours ago, are debating very, very strict caps on the amount of revenue of oil and gas imports coming into Europe. Just to give a big picture number for everybody, Russia, as we speak, continues to sell oil and gas to Europe because they're desperately dependent on it, and Russia is getting about $1 billion a day U.S. $1 billion a day, and which allows them to keep the thing going, keep the lights on, because they were exempted from the sanctions, and they did that deliberately. The U.S. and Germany and so forth did that because they didn't want the oil and gas to continue flowing, to stop flowing into Europe, because Europe is so dependent on it. But there's now increasing voices. The World Economic Correspondent of the Telegraph, very distinguished person who's been there for years and years, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, has called on the complete stoppage, so that there isn't one molecule, he said, of Russian hydrocarbons coming into the West. And if they did that, that would absolutely destroy, that would completely destroy Russia, because they're completely dependent on that money coming in. That's their only source of revenue now. And he's arguing do something, a massive a diversion of liquefied natural gas and oil from the Middle East that the U.S. could really put the heavy pressure on Saudi Arabia, its ally, to pump a lot more oil and so on. So there are
only they would take the Canadian oil that we want to sell them.
Yes, and so this isn't over yet. I'm talking on the economic side. It isn't over yet. We haven't. The West has not shut down the oil and gas coming out of Russia into Europe. We have not sent the ambassadors home in each of these countries and shut down their embassies. We have not yet revoked the student visas of Russians studying abroad in American, Canadian, British, French, German universities. And let's be clear, the people studying abroad are not the sons and daughters of those Russian peasants making $3,000 a year. These are the sons and the daughters of the elites, of the oligarchs and the upper class, and there's simultaneously measures being proposed in the European Union that they can legally seize the assets of the oligarchs across Europe. I'm talking their yachts and their houses and their private jets and cash and investments in soccer teams and so forth. So there's still a lot more economic financial punishment, I think, that's still yet to be unleashed against Russia. And this is going to end very, very badly for the Russian economy. It's a $1.5 trillion economy, smaller than the state of Texas, smaller than Canada in terms of GDP.
All right. We'll be right back with part two of our conversation this morning. Professor Ian Lee is here from the Sprott School at Carleton. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher, okay? You want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. You know, there's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin, okay? It's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. You know, then customer service. You know, we're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not. If you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there. Okay. If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers, and we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, you know, can you try getting me this? You know, can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now. Okay. So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, you know, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, you know, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, you know, from like all over the world. And we source it through, you know, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. Nothing really complicated about that.
We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to find, Cuddy turkey breast, San Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
Keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So we see another refugee crisis unfolding here, Professor. Professor Ian Lee is with us from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Many are heading to Poland. So you've spent considerable time in the entire region on these teaching assignments. What sort of welcome awaits Ukrainians in Poland, do you think?
Yeah, I've been teaching in Poland since March 1991, and I've been in every year, a minimum of once a year, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a year from then until March 2020 when COVID arrived. So I've been to Poland, 30, 40 times, or something like that.
Right.
I've been to every city on road trips across Poland, Krakow and Gdansk and so forth. It's about 40 million people, just about the size of Canada. And it's a fascinating country. It's in the cities, they become very urban and very modern and very sophisticated. Anybody in Warsaw or any of the cities would feel you were in Toronto, or the people dress fashionably and that sort of thing, and or the latest cell phones and the Apple iPhones and all that stuff. They're not as affluent as we are, but they're still they're modern cities in that respect. You go to the rural, and it's a completely different world. But my experience when I was there, because I would eat out every night. I was staying in a modest hotel the last 2 or 3 years I was teaching there, and a 3-star hotel, and about 10 minutes from the downtown, from the Palace of Culture. And so there's all kinds of open, restaurants out in the street, terraces, we would call them here, a terrace. And I was always teaching in August, so it was warm outside, and I would talk to people, and I met quite a few people. I noticed in the last 3, 4, 5 years, you talk to the server who comes up, and their English is pretty good, and he'd say, "Okay, where are you from in Poland?" "Oh, no, sir, I'm not from Poland." "Oh, where are you from?" "I'm from Ukraine."
Oh, okay.
And so I started talking to my students, and they said over the last 5, 10 years that there was this very significant influx of Ukrainians into Poland because the wages were much higher than in Ukraine. Even though the wages in Poland are much lower than Germany, which is absolutely right next door, the wages are much higher in Poland than in Ukraine. Ukraine is really poor compared to Poland. And so there was a lot of migration. I guess we would call it economic migration of people coming to Poland to study. A lot of young people coming to study, and will work part-time in restaurants as servers, which is very normal. We know that.
Right.
And the figure I saw was quite astonished. It was something like, and I'd have to go research this again, but if I recall, I was told, and I looked it up at the time, and there was something like 3 million Ukrainians that had emigrated. Now, they were not, I don't mean they were Polish citizens. They were there students working part-time, some working full-time, and that sort of thing. But there was a very significant number. But I didn't see any problems. I didn't see any, they seemed to, everybody got along, and there was nothing. And I read the Polish newspapers in English translation assiduously every time I was there, and I didn't see any problems. Remember, they're both Slavic countries, and they've shared a border for forever. And the border keeps, over the centuries has changed and gone back and forth. Lviv, which is in West Ukraine, is only 2.5 hours from Krakow. And you go into West Ukraine, and it looks awfully like Poland. When I go there, I've been there, and my goodness, I'm in Poland. And part of West Ukraine was in Poland in centuries gone by. So there's a huge interplay between Poland and Ukraine, just as there is between Ukraine and Russia. People don't realize, but there's huge intermarriage. I mean, they share a border with Belarus and with Russia, and there's huge intermarriage that goes back and forth. Russians living in Ukraine, Ukrainians living in Russia, married, and the intermarriage is very large. It's like the same interplay between Canada and the United States.
Very
we speak the same language.
We only have a few minutes left here.
Yep.
That's an interesting perspective, though. It's been said this is the start of another Cold War. What do you say to that?
I'm going to go a bit further. If the economy continues to collapse, especially if they cut off the oil, it's going to just absolutely ruin the Russian economy. I mean, just absolutely ruin it. They'll be going back into the Middle Ages almost. And I know a lot of pundits, or some pundits, maybe I'm being unfair, have treated Putin and the oligarchs and the generals in the military as basically interchangeable. They're all the same. I don't believe that at all. I don't. The oligarchs are really rich guys.
Yeah.
Okay? And as F. Scott Fitzgerald taught us 70-odd years ago, he said the rich are not like you and I. He didn't say the American rich or the German rich. He said the rich, period. Rich everywhere want to stay rich. And they, yes, had a partnership. He made a deal, Putin, with them, saying, look, support me and I'll make you rich beyond your wildest dreams. So they had call it a strategic alliance, a partnership. But the oligarchs are not Putin's. And the generals are professional soldiers, just like the soldiers in the American military or in the Chinese military. And I don't believe either the oligarchs signed up to have all of their assets taken away from them, and I don't believe the generals signed up to preside over the absolute destruction of Russia and the Russian economy. So even though they may be winning on the battlefield, and they probably will be, sadly and tragically, if the economy is going into vertical descent and they go into a widespread recession, depression, I will not be shocked at all to see if the military facilitate a coup d'etat, a junta. And this is common in developing countries. You know, Chile had a military coup with Allende. So did Argentina with the Argentine generals. And it's gone on in countries in the Middle East. It's gone on with countries in Central and Latin America, countries in Africa. So I just don't believe that the Russian generals are going to say, you know what, we're going to blow up Ukraine. We've got the whole world against us, and the Russian economy is vanishing. And I think at some point they're going to hit a tipping point, and I mean sometime this year. I won't be shocked. Let me go out on a limb.
Okay.
I won't be shocked if by the end of this year, 2022, Putin is no longer in power.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. We'll see by the end of the year. We'll see what happens by the end of the week. All right. We'll end it there. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yep. Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School at Carleton. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News. We're talking about the great reopening. Again, no restrictions, capacity limits, no vaccine passport in the province of Ontario. I want your take on this, where we go from here. Welcome to the closest we've been to normal in quite some time in Ontario. At 750-1310, the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 1st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, snowing in Ottawa, minus 14, minus 11 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Russia is now outlining the targets it will focus on in places like the capital of Ukraine and the country's second largest city. We get the latest on this Russian invasion of Ukraine with City News reporter Irene Precklett.
Russia's military warning people today they are going to strike inside the capital city. Their plan targets the Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU. That is Ukraine's main government security agency. This comes after Russian forces blasted the central square and other civilian sites in Ukraine's second largest city, Kharkiv. That's where Dan Rivers from ITV is.
You can see complete devastation here. The top of this building behind me has been completely taken out. There's just rubble all over the streets. And people wandering around assessing the damage. Clearly, we're not going to loiter here long, but it seems like Russia has switched tactics from trying to hit military targets at the beginning of this war to now trying to take out symbols of the Ukrainian state.
CNN saying it has confirmed at least 10 deaths in this attack. Meanwhile, a more than 60-kilometer convoy of Russian tanks and other vehicles is getting closer to the capital of Kiev. The West fearing Russia will topple Ukraine's democratic government and install its own. Irene Precklett, City News.
City News time at 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's the start of meteorological spring, but it sure looks and feels a lot like winter. And with this fresh snow, 5 to 10 centimeters possible, a brisk wind out of the northeast for Ottawa, the Valley, Smiths Falls today. High near minus 7. Light wind tonight. Snow should end around 6 o'clock this evening. Minus 15 for the low. For today, the high, minus 7.
And right now it's minus 14 in Ottawa, minus 11 in Smiths Falls. The city's top doctor approves of the lifting of most restrictions across Ontario today. Dr. Vera Etches telling the Rob Snow Show the evidence shows now is the time.
We've seen the hospitalizations come down. Our wastewater has been trending downward. So the trends are in a good place to be able to keep taking these steps.
Now, Etches does say we have to respect people's individual choices, though. She says some may not be comfortable with gathering with friends or family or even in larger places like theaters or arenas. Those decisions must be respected. New legislation could mean jobs where workers are at risk of an opioid overdose would be required to have a naloxone kit available. They would include places like construction sites, bars, and nightclubs. The province says about 2,500 people died from OD between March of 2020 and January of last year. Any workplace does not have naloxone kits available would be subject to the highest possible fines under the Workplace Safety Act. A couple of West End fires in the early morning hours on Hazeldean Road this morning. A 911 caller said there was smoke coming from a second-floor bedroom of a home. The service says the cause of that fire was an overheated charger for a gaming system. Ottawa Fire reminds you there should be smoke detectors inside every bedroom in your home as well as on every floor. The second fire happened on Fernbank. Nobody in the building when Ottawa Fire got the call just after 2 o'clock this morning. Crews arrived at the Stittsville building and had that fire out in about 1 hour. No injuries were reported. The estimate of damage around $50,000. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
The grand reopening of Ontario. Again. But what if they had to do it again? What if the provincial government, say Doug Ford, came to you and said, I'm sorry, but there's a new variant and we need to do this again. Would you agree or disagree with imposing health restrictions again to deal with COVID-19? One more time. How would you answer that? Because, it's a big day for the province of Ontario. Big day for the city of Ottawa. It's the closest that we've been to normal, or the closest that we've been to pre-pandemic life in many months. Most of the public health restrictions end today, and it's happening sooner than it was supposed to. By about 2 weeks. It was moved up by about 2 weeks. It was supposed to happen in the middle of March, but they moved it up a couple of weeks, and the Ford government faced accusations from its critics. We're close to an election, right? That the relaxing of public health measures was done to placate the protesters here in Ottawa or the protesters who were blockading the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, that Doug Ford caved to the protesters. But that's the accusation anyway. But in Ontario and here in Ottawa, as of today, we're pretty much wide open, although the mask mandate is still in place. Premier Ford hinted yesterday that it could be gone by the end of the month, maybe after the end of the March break. This is what he told news reporters yesterday about the mask mandate.
Right from the get-go, I'm listening to the chief medical officer. It's his advice when they're going to come off, and we'll wait for his advice and recommendations. And once he gives the recommendations, we'll be able to move forward. What I'm hearing over the next few weeks, maybe after March break, when the kids get back, but we'll see. I don't want to set a date. And there's no secret. There isn't a person I talk to likes these masks. No one likes them, but I'm going to follow the advice, and we aren't far away.
Okay, not far away, he said, but wouldn't be nailed down on a date. But look, as of today, no more capacity limits for some pretty hard-hit industries. And you don't need to show a vaccine passport or a vaccine certificate. Now, I should say businesses don't have to ask for proof of vaccination. Some still will. They've said we still will. But that also leads me to a couple of follow-up questions that I want to ask you this morning. One is, and I'm just curious, would you be more likely or less likely to go to a business that required proof of vaccination? And when the mask mandate ends, are you just going to ditch the mask, or will you still wear a mask? In, say, crowded settings, for example. I'm just kind of curious where everyone's headspace is right now. But on the big question is the very idea of going through this again. Is this kind of a turning point that we've reached right now? Like, there's no going back from this? Or would you tolerate the government coming to you one more time and saying, look, I know you don't like it, but we need to do it. We need to limit the spread of COVID-19 or some new variant of COVID-19 because, again, it's putting pressure on our healthcare system. What's your tolerance level for something like that? Would you say, well, if it comes to that, so be it. Not crazy about it, but I guess if we have to do it, we have to do it. Or do you say, no, there's no turning back? There has to be another way. Just kind of where are you on that spectrum? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310 on the Rob Snow Show here on City News. It's our Talk Back Hour in Blackburn Hamlet. Brendan.
Yes, hello. Good morning.
Hi, Brendan. It's good
I
to hear
believe
from you.
in masking, and I believe that we should open all businesses.
Well, that is happening today. Most capacity limits are ending now at a lot of the businesses. Now, on the masks, you still have to wear a mask. It's still mandated to wear a mask where you're supposed to wear a mask. But what is going to happen with you, Brendan, say personally, when that time comes and the premier says, well, you don't have to wear a mask anymore?
Well, I'm 80 and a half years old, and
okay.
I protect myself.
Right.
I believe that others should respect each other and wear masks.
Okay. So you probably still wear a mask in certain settings then, even after that.
I double mask if I go out, and I agree that the businesses should be allowed to open. You look at the beautiful Italian and Greek businesses that are trying to survive, and I believe in supporting them whichever way we can.
That's good, Brendan. Thank you so much, sir. It's good to hear from you. And thank you for calling. 750-1310, Talkback Hour here on the Rob Snow Show. Deborah in Ottawa. Deborah,
Rob,
good morning.
all the workers that work in food stores, like grocery stores?
Yes.
They've been at this for 2 years.
Yeah.
You don't see ambulance going in and taking them out. And they say, well, people at shop don't stay long. Look, there's streams of people going through there every hour.
Oh, yes.
These people survive. They've learned to live with it.
Okay.
And as far as hairdos go, I've been there 8 times. Now, the places I go to, I wear my mask.
Yes.
And I mean, we have to learn to live with this. We cannot keep locking people up.
Okay.
Things are going to happen.
So you think we've hit a turning point here?
Oh,
when
yeah,
it comes
because
to...
the third dose, like I'm 74, right?
Right.
It put me in bed for 24 hours. And all of the girls that are in my age group were never getting another shot.
Not getting another shot.
No,
Yeah, you're done.
I don't even care if I go to jail.
Okay. Well, you're really fed up with it, eh?
Oh, well, yeah, because,
okay.
I wear glasses, and no matter what I do, I fog up. I'm going to kill myself getting off a bus one day.
Right.
I mean,
so,
I'm going to land
we just heard from Premier Ford there, Deborah, say, well, maybe after March break you won't have to wear a mask anymore.
Well, that's okay. Like, the problem is, if people want to wear it, wear it. Because
Okay.
I'm going to wear it.
Yeah.
When you get in the elevator, it's small, it could be particles. When you get on the bus, you're with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if you go into a hairdressing place, wear your mask.
Right.
But if you don't want to, don't wear it.
Don't wear it. Okay. All right, Deborah, thank you. Okay. Yeah,
bye-bye.
really interesting. Yeah, okay. Mike in Ottawa. Good morning, Mike. You're on City News.
Yeah, Rob, how you doing?
I'm good, Mike. Thank you.
Good. So for me personally, I would not accept another lockdown.
Right.
Just
Okay.
Just with all the the Johns Hopkins study showing that it's it's had minimal effect.
Right. Okay.
It's killing businesses. Our society is sick. A lot of mental health. A lot of addiction. A lot of people that were stuck in their homes with their abusers. This is never talked about in the mainstream news. There's more than just health.
Yes,
there's other
a lot of
aspects.
collateral damage. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Domestic abuse and these sorts of things,
The best way
addiction.
I can look at it for myself is, like, for me, I have a personal fear of flying. It's an irrational fear because planes are very safe. So should my fear of flying stop everybody else from flying? You know what I mean? Like, people need to take onus on themselves.
Personal responsibility, right? Personal responsibility. Yeah, Dr. Bonnie Henry has this term that she said a month or so ago, self-management, Mike.
Yeah.
Self-management.
And people, I have no problem with people keeping the mask if they choose.
Yeah.
But, like, it's individual. For me personally, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm physically fit. I eat well. I don't do drugs. I don't drink.
Good.
I don't
Good
think
for
I'm
you.
at the same level as an 80-year-old who has who has health issues. It's not
Fair enough.
It's not the same.
Yeah. So here we are. It's it's the first day of March of 2022. Almost 2 full years since the pandemic was declared. And most of the restrictions are gone now. For you, Mike, you would say this is a turning point. No going back, you're saying, Mike.
I hope not.
Hope not.
I hope
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
All right. What about the masks? Premier Ford said maybe after March break you won't have to wear a mask anymore. Are you going to ditch the mask once and for all, or would you still kind of?
I'm personally not going to wear it.
Okay.
But I have no issue with anybody choosing to wear it. So I think it should be a personal decision, and everyone should look after themselves.
Fair enough, Mike. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yep. Tammy in Ottawa. You're on City News. Hi, Tammy.
Hello.
Hi.
So it's interesting because I just came back from the UK yesterday.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
I was visiting my daughter for a month. So
They
when I
ended
left,
all of their restrictions dropped last Thursday. I think was like the drop day for whatever was
That's
left, right? Yeah.
And when I left, we were just beginning Truckerloot.
Truckerloot. I haven't heard it called. I haven't heard it called that.
You haven't
Sorry.
heard that? No, it was Truckerloot. As you can probably tell, I vaccinate and, Truckerloot. I left during Truckerloot. And going there, at first I was very uncomfortable with it all because nobody wears masks. Nobody does. But my daughter who lives there and I wore our masks. We did what we're comfortable with.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And we had people in stores saying to us, you don't need to wear that anymore. And my daughter and I were, we kind of do. because we need to feel good for our own safety.
Right. Okay. Okay.
But it's a whole different thing. I probably wouldn't say the same thing having not been there. Being on a subway where you're crammed in with all kinds of people not wearing masks was very uncomfortable.
So you rode the tube? The tube?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the underground.
The underground, yeah. The underground. And nobody wore a mask, is that?
I would say on
few
the
people,
like
few people.
in the subway and stuff like this, the LRT that actually works, most people did not wear them.
Right.
Yeah, I'm funny.
Boy, you're really taking some shots at Ottawa today, Tammy.
No, I love Ottawa. No, I love Ottawa. And I would not move to the UK in a snowstorm.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Trucker lewd. The LRT that works. Oh, my gosh. You crack me up. This is the best call I've had all. I really needed this. Okay.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
But no, it's funny because I was in a situation where nobody, and this is what we potentially might come to.
Yeah.
It's funny that this conversation about not wearing masks and stuff. But you have to choose, I think, because you have no choice. If they say you don't have to wear a mask, you have to choose what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Or don't go places.
Okay. All right, Tammy. Thank you for the call. Thank you. I mean, really, thank you. Have you heard that before?
No.
Trucker lewd?
I think she may have come up with that.
That is really...
Why didn't we think of that?
Why didn't we think of that? Exactly. We were here the whole month. Why didn't we come up with that? All right. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show on City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barber Shop, and it was kind of... it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you know, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've got 10 other people working for you, you're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, I mean, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, you know, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, you know, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, you know, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, you know, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, like, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Grand reopening of Ontario. again. Would you ever tolerate another series of public health restrictions, lockdown-type measures, or is today a turning point for you? It's March 1st of 2022, and there's no turning back. When the mask mandate ends, maybe later this month, according to the Premier, are you going to ditch the mask for good? That's it. I'm never wearing a mask again. Or will you save a few and wear them in, say, crowded public places? And businesses can still ask you to show your proof of vaccination, your vaccine passport. Are you more likely, less likely to frequent a business that asks for proof of vaccination? I'd love to know the answer to these questions. Troy in Orleans. Good morning, Troy. You're on City News.
Hey, Rob. Good to talk to you.
It's good to hear from you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So definitely sick of it all. I would just love, I think the right that's been taken away from me that I miss the most is my right to impose my own common sense,
Okay, your own common sense, okay.
I'll give you an example just real quick, okay?
Yeah.
I can go into a restaurant today with 12 of my friends. We can sit down in a tiny little restaurant, take off our masks, eat a meal for 2 hours, and then those same 12 people, let's say we, I'm a member of whatever, okay? And we have a city building here in Orleans that we rent a hall out for an hour once a week, okay? The city said we can come there, we can have up to 60 people in there, but we got to wear masks.
Okay.
Even though there's only 10 people in that room of 60 people, and I just sat with those people for 2 hours having food and restaurant.
Right.
I can't go into that room and take my mask off. It's just like, where is the common sense? I was watching a hockey game the other night in Calgary. Nobody in the arena had a mask on. Now, what is it that our public health people know that Calgary doesn't?
Right.
Why are they allowed to not wear masks already? I don't get it, Rob.
This has been part of the issue all along, is that we don't just have one healthcare system. We have, many, many healthcare systems. Every province has its own healthcare system and,
right?
does its own thing.
Are these people
right?
talking to each other?
Well, yeah, sometimes you wonder. Wonder. So you're still frustrated by the inconsistency of some of the policies.
Well,
right?
I always have been, right?
Yeah,
from the beginning. And I've taken time off work now. My wife's been off work now, from the mental health.
Yeah.
Both of us work in healthcare for 2 years. She's been off since the summer. I've been off since January. It's just too much.
Do you think today's a turning point, though? Is it?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope people this. I'm going to tell you something. The only real fear in life comes from the future. The only real fear is danger. So if you're not in danger, there's nothing to fear. And I believe the danger is diminished significantly.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So
I hope
that's
so.
where I stand. Thanks,
so. Thank you, Troy. Thank you for your call. Good to hear from you. Haven't heard from that caller in a while. Michael in Orleans, you're on City News. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Great to talk to you. Rob, the perception of safety.
Okay.
The perception of safety, when it has been proven time and time again scientifically that the effects are minimal on the mask. But let's not get into the mask thing. You asked, would you accept another lockdown?
Would you ever tolerate another series of public health restrictions, or is today
Johns Hopkins University in the United States, and this is not some right-wing university. They've already proven that lockdowns are ineffective, and Sweden didn't.
But again, that doesn't stop politicians from imposing them. Right?
Again, the perception of safety. This is a political situation. It's not a health situation. Come on, everyone has to know this at this point.
Okay.
I think it would be tough to sell another lockdown on the populace.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because of the knowledge that is now out there, and I deprogram my children at dinner time every night, and I call them obedience masks and not safety masks, because this is a complete decision based on the politic of the country and not of the. And remember, even our health sciences, even our doctors are political. So. This is over. I think it's a great day, and I just wanted to call and say, if you want to wear a mask post mask mandates being removed, feel free. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to have any schadenfreude and make fun of you. If you're at risk, wear a mask. The rest of us have moved on, and I think the populace has as well.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Okay. Deprogram or reprogram. Steve. You're on City News. Steve, good morning.
Good morning. I would really be opposed to more lockdowns.
Yeah.
We're done with that now.
So today's kind of a turning point then, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
A day to celebrate kind of thing. We're pretty much back to normal.
Yeah. But for me, if people want to keep wearing their masks, I'll probably keep a mask with me just in case. If any time I get a cold or anything like that, I'll probably wear a mask just, to help other people, to ease their mind kind of thing. You don't want to be hacking up along in the bus somewhere and having everybody freaking out.
Right. Yeah, good point. Yeah, you don't want to create a fuss.
That's it.
Right, yeah, okay. I'm not getting a lot of response to the question on, the vaccine passport. It's not, the province isn't making it, mandatory province-wide anymore, but individual businesses can still ask you for your proof of vaccination. Would you be more or less likely to frequent a business that asks you to show your vaccine passport?
I wouldn't change anything for me.
Wouldn't change anything. You're good either way. Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
I got the double vax, the booster, everything else.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You're fully dosed. All fueled up. Okay. All right, Steve. All the best, sir. Thank you for your call. Let's take another one here. Keep them coming. One line available there. What is this? Gio?
Yes. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Pleasure to be on the show. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, thank you so much for calling. And
no worries at all. I wanted to respond specifically to the question that you asked the last caller about the vaccine passports and if it would affect. Now, I'd like to say I'm not a fan particularly of the QR code vaccine passport, but I will have to say I have a lot of respect for the businesses who will still ask for it because I think that's a really big thing to do. And, I've been an essential worker. I've been working through the entirety of the pandemic, and, I've had my fair share of having COVID scares, and, I think that's something that's really brave of a business to do, and I know a lot of the times they'll get to put it bluntly for radio, they'll get poo-pooed on.
Yeah, they'll get heck for it. There will be incidents and probably viral videos and stuff like that, right?
People flipping out, and the obvious, the Karens. But I have to say, I have a lot of respect for businesses that do that, and I think that personally on this pandemic, I think that if we look to the States, I feel like they've had it a lot worse, but they've had it a bit of the head of the curve, and I feel like we follow them in the waves of the pandemics, but we're like a couple of months behind. So I think they're pretty good right now, but I think we'll be at that level where they're able to go out without masks and stuff. But I think we're on the right step, and hopefully we don't have another lockdown. So thank you.
Thank you for calling. Great to hear from you, sir. Yep. Bye-bye. Halftime already. It's the Talkback Hour Rob Snow Show on reopening day again for the province of Ontario, March 1st. Almost 2 full years later since the declaration of the pandemic. Your thoughts, please, at 750-1310. This is City News.
1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 1st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, snowing and minus 13 in Ottawa, minus 11 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. Latest from Ukraine. Russian forces preparing for an all-out assault on the capital of Kiev. Some residents have been told to get out of certain areas by the Russians of that city because they're targeted for bombing. At Kharkiv Central Square, that is that country's second largest city, reports at least 10 civilians were killed in a bombing, once again in that city. The lifting of COVID measures dealing with passports and capacity limits meets with the approval of Ottawa Public Health. Dr. Vera Etches telling the Rob Snow Show this morning indicators like hospitalization and wastewater show a decline in the COVID case count. She says there will continue to monitor all this closely. Etches also says for anyone uncomfortable in going into a group setting, well, their wishes have to be respected as well. Legislation requiring any workplace where a potential for opioid overdose will be mandated to carry naloxone kits. Provincial government introducing legislation that, if passed, would require bars, restaurants, and construction sites to have those kits on hand. The government says in the last year's stats were available, 30% of overdoses were at construction jobs. City News Time 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show.
The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Most of the pandemic restrictions end today. Not the mask mandate, but would you ever tolerate another series of public health restrictions, lockdown measures, or is today a turning point, like no going back? It's March 1st, 2022, onward and upward. When the mask mandate ends, and Doug Ford said maybe after March break, is that it for mask wearing for you, or will you still carry a few around and wear one in, crowded public places, whatever the case might be? And businesses can still ask you to show your vaccine passport. Are you more likely or less likely to frequent a business that asks for proof of vaccination? Back to it. Julia in Pakenham, you're on City News. Julia.
Hello there.
Hi there.
Nice to speak with you.
Nice to speak with you.
So we are definitely against the vaccine and mask wearing and all sorts of nonsense that's been going on.
Okay.
Yesterday I went into Canadian Tire not wearing a mask, but I was wearing a Leafs hat and a Leafs coat. And when I went to ask help from somebody that was working there, she said, "Oh, I can't serve you. I can't help you. You're wearing a Leafs hat."
Oh.
And I said, so the fact that I'm not wearing a mask doesn't offend you, but because I'm wearing a Leafs hat, it offends you? People are already getting used to it not wearing masks. People don't want to wear masks anymore.
Okay. They're still mandated, though. To wear a mask.
They are,
right?
but people are, we live away out in the country.
Right.
There's a lot more space out here.
Sure.
Our county is the largest county in Ontario, and there's only been, I think, 32 deaths.
Okay.
So my whole family's unvaccinated. My children are unvaccinated. My in-laws are unvaccinated. At Christmas time, we only had unvaccinated people here. None of us have ever been sick, well, that we know of. It could have just been a cold. So since March 2020, we as a family have done what has asked of us by the government, which was to bunker down. We took our 4 children out of school. I've been homeschooling them the whole time. We live on a small farm in the Ottawa Valley. We grow lots of our food. We grow our own meat.
Right.
We barely have to go to the grocery store. We barely go anywhere besides the feed store to feed our animals, the hardware store, the
That's a
grocery
pretty
store.
exceptional life that you're leading there. Most people don't live the way you live.
We choose how we live, right? We
Sure.
choose
Yeah,
this
fair
life,
enough.
But we are considered unsafe. Because we are unvaccinated.
Right.
But we don't travel. We don't go to restaurants. We don't do anything. We haven't passed on the virus. We haven't done anything. People travel the world because they're vaccinated. They're safe, but then they bring back new variants from the other side of the world. We're treated like lepers because we don't have a vaccine passport.
Yeah. I don't want to get into all of this stuff again. Been all through this, up one side of it and down the other for the better part of a year. I'm asking some pretty 3 basic questions here. So you've already ditched the mask, right? So,
it's all ditched. Doug Ford said we all know we can have 10 shots or 1 shot and still get the virus and pass it on. So people are getting sick of it. People that are unvaccinated say today passports. I'm the same person yesterday as I am today.
Right.
But to the government, I wasn't accepted yesterday, but I'm accepted today.
All right. Oh, got you, Julia. I'm going to move along. Thank you. Steve in Westboro. Steve.
Yes, I know 2 people right now. They're in their early 30s that had the COVID. They started getting sick last Saturday.
Yeah.
And they're as sick right now. Right now, I'm talking to the lady about 45 minutes ago, and she's very sick right now with the COVID. Her husband has it.
Oh, no.
And they're in their early 30s. I think Doug Ford's making a huge error by opening up everything.
Okay.
I think he's going to have to shut down eventually.
And if, say that date comes, and he said, folks and friends, I hate to do this to you again, but we got to close it all up again. What would be your reaction to that?
Good. You know why?
Okay. All right.
That, I think Doug Ford was pressured to open up by the truckers in Ottawa, what they did there. That's what I think.
Okay.
And they went to his house, the protesters, and the police had to escort him out of his house in his neighborhood, right?
Well, it's happened,
I think Doug Ford is being pressured to open up.
You think he caved into the protesters?
Exactly.
Okay.
He did.
All right.
He did.
Okay.
And now he's putting everybody under the gun again by opening up too soon.
All right, Steve. Thank you, Steve. Okay. Anne in Ottawa. Good morning, Anne.
Hello?
Hi, Anne.
Oh, sorry. I'll take it off.
So would you tolerate another series of public health restrictions if the government said it was needed, or is this kind of a turning point, do you think?
Well, I do think it's a turning point. I mean, I'm going to do, I don't want to choose this hill to die on, so I'm going to do whatever we have to do.
Okay.
But I think we are mentally ready to be open. We're all bloody sick of this.
Yeah.
The truckers were just acting out what a lot of us already feel. Enough's enough already. I've had 3 vaccines. I'm satisfied with my risk. The thing is about the mask.
Yeah.
I will choose when I want to wear a mask. And if I go in a store, I probably will for a while because, frankly, I'd feel a little weird not doing that. Because
Right. You're going to need to, like a transition time. You're going to need some transition.
But, why not? To me, that's a stupid thing to worry about. I don't know. And if a business, I was at a restaurant yesterday, and I asked them that very question. I said, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to do the vaccine mandate? And they said, well, we're going to ask our customers and see what they're comfortable with.
Oh, okay.
And I said,
does it matter to you either way? Like if you went to this restaurant and they said you have to show us proof of vaccination, would you be?
Yes, it would be fine with me.
You'd be fine. Okay.
Because I've been vaccinated. I'm not that worried.
Yeah.
But I mean, being in a store and everybody's touching everything and getting real close to you, I don't know, it's a different thing. Like I'm at my own little booth at a restaurant,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Ann, thank you. Nice to hear from you this morning. 750-1310. There's a line available. It's very busy this morning on this topic. Lauren in Ottawa, you're on City News.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Lauren.
Thanks for taking my call.
You're welcome. Appreciate that.
To answer your questions, I think it is really hard for businesses to make that choice, but the businesses that do make that choice to require proof of vaccination will absolutely have my business.
They will. Okay. And why is that?
I think
peace of mind.
Caring about the community. I am young. I am healthy. I am triple vaccinated. I wear my N95 everywhere. I'm a healthcare worker. I have HEPA filters at my place of employment, so I've done everything to reduce my risk. But I have to do as much as I can to reduce the risk of those around me and those who are vulnerable. Children under 5 cannot be vaccinated. Immunocompromised people cannot be vaccinated or have less effective vaccination. I think the complaints about masking and about, refusal to follow these basic guidelines just reflects a selfishness. And it's really discouraging to see. I don't think COVID cares about politics. COVID doesn't care how you feel about your mask. And the more people that make a fuss and, politicians who pander instead of following true science, and not the science that people choose as being acceptable, real science, peer-reviewed and peer-full literature, the longer we're going to be in this pandemic and the more division we're going to see between people who can't look beyond their own selfishness and care about their community.
All right. Thank you for your call. I like the way you said that. One more here. Stittsville. Diane in Stittsville.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Diane.
I'm going to still wear a mask probably for at least 6 months.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because I actually look better in a mask.
Okay.
So,
I find that hard to believe, Diane. Come on now.
So around Christmas, my daughter was here from Vancouver.
Okay.
And she was able to go to the Museum of Nature and the Diefenbunker. But she couldn't go to the War Museum or the History Museum because they closed down. Now, at the other museums, you had to show your mandate.
Yes.
And now you still have to show that to go into most of these museums.
Right.
So they're government places, and they still want to prevent the spread. And I'm going to be disappointed if we have to have another lockdown for all those workers in restaurants and hairdressers and everywhere. It's really difficult for them. So I hope we don't.
Yeah, I think we all hope that. But for a lot of people, they're of the frame of mind that, no, there has to be another way. We have to learn to live with it, for example. I put that to Dr. Etches this morning. Are you there where, we have to learn to live with it? And she was very cautious about, it's not endemic yet. We're not out of the pandemic and into this endemic phase yet. So be careful when you throw around these phrases. We have to learn to live with it. But nevertheless. Okay, Diane, thank you.
Rob.
Thank you. Nice to hear from you in Stittsville today. Gord in Edwards. Gord.
Hi, how you doing today, Rob?
I'm good, Gord. Thank you. How are things in Edwards?
Snowing.
Snowy. Yeah, it's pretty snowy here, too, today. Well,
Okay,
boy, the never-ending winter here. Okay.
I'm double
ahead.
vaccinated.
Yeah, okay.
And if I would go to some place and they say to me, "Oh, are you vaccinated? Show me your tickets." Well, I have them in my wallet, but I feel for me to say, yes, I'm double vaccinated. Me as a 64-year-old man, I should be believed.
Right.
Yes, I'm double vaccinated. Why should I show them when I know I've been double vaccinated? That's everybody's different opinion. With the other two questions, a lockdown, living in the country, I really don't get into the position that I'm with a lot of people wearing a mask. I just did what I wanted to anyway. If I wanted to go grocery shopping, I went grocery shopping. I had my mask on.
Right. But it's hit the economy really hard, Gord, right? So,
it certainly has.
Yeah.
With the masks, it's...
Like, are you still going to carry a few around?
I will carry them around, but for a different reason.
Okay.
I want to smell other people's bad breath, and they won't smell mine.
No, I see. Okay. It's about halitosis, then, Gord, for you.
Well,
yeah, I got you. Yeah.
I don't, but I do have bad breath.
All right. Well, okay. All right, Gord.
I think the mask would have to be, after it's taken off, it's their own personal opinion if they want to wear it. I personally would be in a high-risk zone if I were to get it. I really can't see me pushing wearing the mask. But everybody's got to remember that before the pandemic came, there were a lot of people that were already walking around the streets wearing masks.
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
So it's not as if it's a brand new thing, because I can name different times in a lot of different places where you see 10, 15, 20 people, and they've already had masks on. This is 4 or 5 years ago and up to that. So
all right.
It's not I don't think it's going to hurt people to have to want to wear the mask, and I wouldn't hold it against anybody. And if somebody came to my house and said, "Do you mind wearing a mask?" I would not think anything about abiding and say, "Sure, I'll wear a mask. It's not hurt me any. It's going to hurt."
Very accommodating, Gord. Thank you. Thank you for the call this morning, sir. Yeah, from Edwards. 1045, calls from all around the region. Orleans, Vanier, Nepean. We'll be right back. Final quarter, one line available there. This is the Rob Snow Show, City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our Pamper Items. So your Pamper Items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes. They're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Quarter of the Rob Snow Show Talkback Hour here on City News with the grand reopening underway here now in the province of Ontario, 2 weeks sooner than originally planned, asking if you would ever tolerate another series of public health restrictions if, you know, the need arose, or is today it's kind of like there's no turning back from today. When the mask mandate ends, maybe later this month, according to the Premier, are you going to ditch the mask once and for all, or will you keep a few around, still, wear them, grocery store, riding public transit, whatever the case might be? And businesses can still ask you to show your vaccine passport. It's not required that the business show one, but they can on an individual basis. So are you more likely or less likely to frequent a business that asks for proof of vaccination? Proof of vaccination. Let's take this line. In Vanier, Kim. Good morning, Kim. You're on City News.
Hi, Rob. Good
Kim.
morning.
Hi, good morning.
Your last caller, you mentioned that it's still a pandemic and it's not gone into an endemic.
That's what Dr. Etches said this morning, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Etches, right. So she speaks for the whole world then, because I thought a pandemic was across the globe. So wouldn't that be the World Health Organization that would say the pandemic's actually ended?
Well, whatever the case might be, she's speaking in her capacity as the chief medical officer of Ottawa, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm actually getting at is, will they actually say one day, okay, the pandemic's over, that we're not in that status anymore? That's just my question. But anyways,
okay. Well, I can't answer that question. Whether
yes,
other people
bringing it
say.
up because that's still a status that we're all in across the globe. Will it ever end? Hopefully, it will. But my point is, if any business, if I decide to go to a restaurant or a business and they ask me for the passport, I'll just hightail it out of there and say, if you don't want my business, it's segregation and it's just not appropriate.
Okay.
And it never was,
okay.
in my opinion.
Okay.
The masks, I'm ready to dump them. I have a hard time breathing. My husband can't breathe with them. He has to wear a shield. And I have a pack of them in my car. I mean, they will remain there. But as soon as they say you don't have to, I'm not going to be wearing it.
Okay. And like, is today a turning point? Like, there's no going back from today kind of thing, or?
Well, what's today is March 1st. What, they're lifting the mandate for
vaccine passports, capacity limits end for all businesses. So, yeah. Pretty wide open, really, you know.
It's the beginning. It's the beginning. And like I said, I hope that they change the status and say that we're not in a pandemic anymore so that people can stop panicking.
Okay, all right. Okay.
And getting sick from masks because they cut off your oxygen. They are bacteria growers. You get acne from them.
Oh, really?
They're not really.
I haven't had any of those problems.
I know a lot of people who have.
Oh, yeah? I don't know anybody who's had. I'm going to move along here. We're running a little tight on time. Darlene in Nepean. Darlene.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Darlene.
Yeah, we're still in a pandemic.
Yes.
And we haven't had leadership from day one. It's been, we suggest, we advise, it's never been, it's mandated, because it's like there was an article in Reuters, I believe it was, about Denmark, and they had, stopped all mandates as well.
Right, yeah.
Wear a mask. Don't wear a mask, you know, and... COVID is going to have the last word.
Okay.
And when I listen to people saying it gives me acne or, I can't breathe. Well, COVID, if you get COVID, you'll stop breathing. And, Pat King said, the alleged, I keep saying I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You mean the convoy guy?
The alleged one of the leaders.
Ringleader, yeah.
Yeah, when he found out that he was going to jail, and he said no, he was all upset because I'll get COVID.
You might get COVID there, yeah.
Hell, yeah. Well, here's the thing.
That a lot of people did not miss the irony in that, Darlene. Yeah, I'm with you there. Marie in Orleans. Marie.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Marie.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you? I don't like the weather, but otherwise I'm okay. Yeah.
I know this weather is a little bit crazy.
It's too much for me. Look.
Yeah, but
on to on the topic here. Let's say that day comes. We've seen Doug Ford do this. Folks, I really don't want to do this again, folks and friends. But public health comes first, and I have to. We have to go back, but we'll get through it again. Would you ever tolerate that again? Another series of lockdown-type measures?
No way.
No way.
We're done. We're done.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're done. Too much damage has been done to so many people's livelihoods, their lives, businesses, bank accounts. No way. Enough's enough. Those who are at high risk, they've got themselves vaccinated. They're getting themselves boosted. If the vaccines work as they should, being vaccinated yourself should be enough to protect you. A lot of people are commenting about how they won't go to restaurants if they aren't asking for proof of vaccine. I just want to remind your listeners that those servers have never had to be vaccinated ever during this entire pandemic.
Right.
So while you were sitting at your table without a mask on and your server showed up with it half down to the nose, very flimsy and not an N95, you had no idea if she was vaccinated. So why does the person sitting 20 feet away from you matter? Like, the logic and the science just doesn't compute.
A lot of
in
inconsistencies.
My mind.
A lot of inconsistencies, right? Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
And when there's that many inconsistencies, it's really hard. And another really big thing that we're forgetting is we have an antiviral treatment available now. So if you do get very sick from COVID and you're not vaccinated, we have antivirals that have now been approved.
There is an antiviral that's approved for use in Canada. I'm not sure about its availability because the last I heard, I haven't looked that up in a long time, it wouldn't even be available until the summer in Canada. So
And so that is so if people who are worried about the virus should be calling out their government officials for not making something that was right away. And don't discriminate against your neighbor who's decided not to get, like, I'm double vaxxed, but if someone has made that choice, we need to stop discriminating against those people. And I will hightail it out of any location that is discriminating against the unvaccinated, because the science doesn't stop vaccinate. Like, we know the science doesn't say you can't transmit if you're vaccinated.
But it is about serious illness. It's about ending up in the hospital being seriously ill. I'm only ending our conversation there because we only have a couple of minutes left, and I want to take at least this one call because he's been waiting the longest. It's in Renfrew. Rob, you're on City News. Rob.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good, sir.
Yes. Well, I think as a society, on the vaccine passport issue with businesses, I think there's enough division in our society. So I don't know. I'm just wondering if it's going to hurt businesses in the long run, because we've talked about the science, and the science is saying, this is the way we should go. And if we have to back up those measures, then so be it. It's going to be a hit and miss game from here on in. So, but I think asking for passport vaccines, all that stuff, is just going to create more division in our society. And as for mask, personal choice. I have elderly parents, so I'll be wearing it around them and probably out for a while.
Okay. But is today a turning point for you? Like a turning point? Like no going back from here, or?
Well, I think it's a turning point for all of us, but like this pandemic, it's been full of so many surprises. Yes. And if we have to back it up, I think we have to do what's responsible for all. That doesn't, I'm not pushing vaccines, I'm not pushing anti-vaccine, I'm just saying, like, we're all in this together, but I think the last thing we need is more division, so.
Good. Well said, sir. Thank you. That's it for the Talkback Hour. Wow, that turned out to be a red-hot hour. Thank you. We may pick up on some of those themes tomorrow for the Talkback Hour, but hey, we'll see what tomorrow brings. Coming up right after the news, my friend on the right side of things, Michael Taube, syndicated columnist, really tough on Justin Trudeau this week in the National Post. We'll talk about that when we come back on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 1st. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, snowing and minus 13 in Ottawa, minus 11 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. As the Ukrainian capital and the second largest city in that country prepare for an all-out offensive from Russian troops, an emotional plea from the Prime Minister. We get the latest from City News reporter Irene Precklett.
At least 10 people were killed in today's attack on Kharkiv and dozens of others hurt. The city's central square blasted. Russia's military warning people today they are going to strike inside the capital city. Their planned targets include the Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU. That is Ukraine's main government security agency. CNN's Clarissa Ward is there and says they've already heard one loud blast.
As you can hear from the sirens wailing behind me, is that there is an understanding that tonight is going to be a very long night here in Kiev, that the city is going to be under a full assault that is likely to include aerial bombardment.
And there are reports that a Russian airstrike has now taken out a TV tower in Kiev, and Ukrainian TV channels have now stopped broadcasting. Irene Precklett, City News.
City News time 11:02. Snow expected to taper off by early this evening. Right now, the snow continues, minus 13 in Ottawa, minus 11 in Smiths Falls. As vaccine passports and capacity limits are lifted today across Ontario, Ottawa's top doctor says not everyone is going to be comfortable with that. Dr. Vera Etches tells the Rob Snow Show we have to be respectful, though, of people's choices.
We want people to know there's a time of transition here. There's got to be a respect for individuals to continue to be cautious, to use distance, to choose to gather where there aren't large crowds.
Now, Etches says Ottawa Public Health will continue to monitor things like hospitalization and infection rates, as well as wastewater, making sure the case count of COVID doesn't spike again. Almost all of Ontario's public health restrictions have been dropped now, except for mask wearing. And that prompted the question to the Education Minister, Stephen Lecce, on when students will be able to go mask-free.
We're going to continue to work with, consult, and follow the advice of Dr. Moore on the next steps. Obviously, today's an important day in Ontario's reopening as we get back to normal, on track to doing that. And I think many Ontarians are pleased with that. We've taken a gradual, cautious approach to reopening.
The province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore, last week said he would recommend a mask requirement be ended in school at the same time it ends everywhere else. City News time 11:03. The provincial government introducing legislation that will require workplaces to have naloxone kits, at least some of them. Here's City News reporter Richard Southern.
Naloxone can reverse an opioid overdose. The Ford government will introduce legislation today which will require workplaces that are most at risk for a worker opioid overdose to have these kits on hand. These workplaces include bars and nightclubs and even construction sites. The Ford government says of the 2,500 people who died from an opioid overdose last year, 30% of them worked in construction. This will be included in a new bill to be tabled at Queen's Park called the Working for Workers Act, which will also introduce big fines for companies that don't follow workplace health and safety laws. Richard Southern, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Syndicated columnist, former speechwriter for Stephen Harper, Michael Taube. He's with us every Tuesday morning, back with us on City News this morning. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to hear from you. Boy, you're tough on Trudeau this week in the National Post. Very, very harsh column. What prompted the column?
I think the same thing that's prompted other columns, including the one I'd written the previous week for the Wall Street Journal. Look, you can play with kid gloves with Justin Trudeau during his leadership, and you can point to the fact that he has been prime minister since 2015, that he has won 3 federal elections, albeit 2 of them with minority governments, and finishing in second place with a popular vote. And you can disregard or basically ignore as best you can all the many, many failures that this man has had from 2015 on. I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'm unique in the sense that, at least in terms of columnists, political pundits.
You're preaching to the converted here, Mike. You're preaching.
Yeah, exactly. No, and you are, and many of us are. See, that's what also is amusing, too. You know, the reaction to it is obviously brought out the left-wing trolls, so to speak, who are all disappointed and discouraged that, you know, that I've attacked their hero. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. More than 2/3 of this country does not care for your hero, has not cared for your hero, according to any opinion poll I've seen. And the fact that sometimes Canadians will back him for brief periods of time doesn't mean it's consistent. And if you look at opinion polling, it actually then changes quite a bit, which, again, is normal of any leader. But was I really hard on him, calling him a national embarrassment? No, because I've actually used that term off and on for years. And I'm certainly not the only one, Rob, who feels that way. He is a national embarrassment, and when some people point out he's also an international embarrassment, well, that's completely accurate as well. But again, this is what you would sort of, obviously some people would expect from someone who has been associated with the Conservatives as long as I have, ideologically, politically, the fact that I've worked for them as an ex-speechwriter for Stephen Harper, et cetera, et cetera. You know, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Long before I worked for Harper, I wrote. I have been writing for over 25 years, so I've been doing this for a long time. And whether people know what I stand for, know how to spell my last name, know what I believed in all these years, it doesn't matter because obviously there's lots of voices. But in the end, ultimately, was I really harsh on him? No, I think it really is the harsh reality that a lot of Canadians just don't face.
Yeah, that's very good. The harsh reality. The reality is harsh. Okay.
Play on words.
Yeah, that's very good. What did you think of how he handled or mishandled the protests here in Ottawa?
Well, look, you and I have talked about it, and I've talked about it with others, and I'm sure you've talked about it with plenty. He mishandled a lot of it. And again, it goes back to the very beginning. It's easy to look in hindsight and say, well, you know, he should have done this, this, and that, and not done this, this, and that. But the easiest starting point is from the very beginning, Justin Trudeau was for the most part hidden during the protest, during the entire Freedom Convoy, so much so that both people on the political right and the political left not only noted it, it became a running joke or a gag, certainly in your city in Ottawa and elsewhere too. And the other part that also sort of worked hand in hand with it is not only did the Prime Minister stay away from it, he actually refused. And no senior Liberal cabinet minister or even Liberal MP that I'm aware of, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, actually went out to the Freedom Convoy to either speak with or break bread with either the organizers, which I don't think a lot of people would have assumed they would do, or more importantly, the protesters, who were average Canadians that came from coast to coast, from all walks of life, and had genuine grievances with the Prime Minister, with the Liberal government, and with the way Mr. Trudeau had been handling COVID-19, including many of the lockdown measures we faced.
No.
Justin Trudeau not only didn't do that, what he did instead was he basically called them a fringe minority, a group that simply because they don't agree with him, they didn't walk hand in hand with his philosophy, they disagreed with a lot of the government regulations and restrictions that have been put forward during COVID. For that reason, he diminished what they stood for. Yeah. He admonished them for being out there, and he ridiculed them.
And once he did that, it was, you know, the whole scene was it was a no-go zone for Liberals, right? So
exactly. Exactly. Well, look, if your leader's not going to go out, you're obviously not going to do it. So I get that part of it, and I'm sure there are Liberals behind the scenes who would have probably preferred to go out to at least try to ease some of the tensions. But when Justin Trudeau is basically saying nah and just insulting them, they're not going to get involved.
Okay. So out of the Emergencies Act into the global emergency, right? Yeah. And, war in Europe here. And some observers think this government is doing a decent job at responding to the situation in Ukraine. I think it's kind of getting caught up. That's my own opinion. Yeah. And I think Prime Minister Trudeau is being outshone by stronger people in that Liberal fold. Chrystia Freeland, Anita Anand. What's your impression of the last week here for the Prime Minister?
I think your analysis is pretty fair, Rob. I think he has been outshone. Yes, he's obviously reacting, and Canada is obviously doing certain things, related to everything from how the military is going to respond, how the government's going to respond, what they're willing to send over or share ultimately. And even obviously things that are being done provincially at home, related to province by province or federally, if you like, to sports, to the sales of alcohol, whatever. There are certainly things happening in this country. No one's questioning that. But yes, I think the Chrystia Freeland, Anita Anand, and others who are prominent Liberal ministers or very prominent in his caucus and in his cabinet, they have actually been out there front and center talking on issues. And whether you like the Liberals or not is not the issue. It's the question of whether the spokespeople who are out there are actually, the message is resonating with others. I think that ultimately, and again, you'd have to speak to Liberals too, I think Freeland, Anand, and others have been more effective in terms of their messaging than the Prime Minister. But again, and I know it sounds like I'm harping on it, is that really a big surprise? Because people like Freeland and Anand were always better communicators than Justin Trudeau was. So I think it basically almost goes part and parcel, or hand in hand, if you'd like, with the fact that, yes, the Liberal government is reacting, but it's the wrong person being out there front and center. It's people that he trusts around him, and that's good, but it really should be Trudeau. The problem is that Trudeau doesn't have the respect and doesn't have the ability to reach out to a wide swath of Canadians and actually bring them in terms of, what Canada's position with the Russia-Ukraine initially conflict, now invasion, should be, and he leaves it to his senior cabinet ministers. That's not leadership, in my opinion.
Okay. U.S. President Joe Biden will deliver his State of the Union address tonight. So You're a former speechwriter. Here's like the mother of all speeches. Man, oh man, the preparation that must go into something like the State of the Union address. Enormous. Yeah. What do you think will be some of the key messages from President Biden tonight?
Yeah, it's interesting what they probably had planned, because a State of the Union, or the SOTU, if you'd like, that speech, that is not something that's done on the fly. That takes months of planning. But based on the fact of what's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now, obviously they're going to pivot and move in that direction. Whereas they might have talked more about domestic issues, a lot of the focus will have to be on international. Which is not to say that Biden will ignore everything domestically. Of course, he'll talk about some of the government programs that he's introduced, some of the successes that he's had, what they plan to work on, etc. But I think most Americans are going to be clamoring for some, if they tune in to listen to it, because as we know, those numbers have dropped over the years. But those who do come in and who are interested, and whether they're enthusiastic with the president or they don't personally like him, they want to hear what the American position is going to be on the Russia-Ukraine, let's call it an invasion, or Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, I guess is best to call it now. They don't assume that Joe Biden is necessarily going to introduce anything different at this stage. He's not going to suddenly announce that there's going to be, a ton of more troops that are going to be put out, sent out to that region, or that things are going to change, or that the whole discussion of whether there should be a no-fly zone or whatnot will be there. But certainly American interests will be discussed. Mr. Biden has always had a penchant for foreign affairs. This is something he really likes. And more importantly, this is something where he can build very small but existing bridges with Republicans, or conservatives if you like, because he has an interest in this and realizes that while he's not necessarily today as much of a hawk on foreign policy as he was years ago, he has a far more sensible approach to foreign policy than most of the left-leaning members of his party. Ergo, when he speaks on it, Republicans may not clap all the time, they may shrug sometimes, but they're not going to go in there and be frustrated with what Mr. Biden's going to discuss about Russia and Ukraine or what he proposes. If anything, they'll listen intently. They'll clap where it's necessary and where they feel it's warranted. And for the White House itself, the important thing is, and I've worked on speeches like a State of the Union, although in Canada it's very different, it's all key in terms of the messaging that they use. Various types of sentences, phrases, and paragraphs can obviously get an audience reaction. You have to basically go and pull at their emotional heartstrings, so to speak, because this is the type of speech where so many things are going on in the world, and especially a global conflict that people worry could turn into either a European-wide war or worse.
Yeah.
You need to have a confident American president standing there, and whether you like Joe Biden or not, he has enough political experience, he has enough savvy to understand what he should or should not say. So it'll be an interesting speech, if nothing else.
It'll be
far
interesting.
more fascinating than the previous one.
Yeah, I'll be interesting to see, given the times that we're in and the events that have unfolded over the last week, whether there is in the room this sense of, unity, I guess, given how divided America is and how partisan Washington is between Republicans and Democrats, but whether there's a sense of unified purpose now in defeating Putin,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, you would assume there'd be some, if nothing else. Yes, you obviously, partisanship is a major problem in the United States politically, and it's not going to change overnight, and this speech is not going to have any dramatic effect one way or the other. But yes, you're right. If there ever is a period or a time to come together, Russia's invasion of Ukraine would be the right time, I think.
Yeah. They do it up so well. I mean, it really is an event. The State of the Union address, the pomp and the circumstance, and the elaborate display, and Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
Yeah. But you know what? A lot of people point and say, "Well, that was Trump who did it." No, it's been like this for many presidents.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're absolutely right. Look, the United States is obviously different than Canada. We don't have to go into great detail about that. But the way that they handle something like a State of the Union is also very different, too. I mean, we have in Canada a very, very, very small amount of that. It's not a lot. And generally speaking, because we follow the Westminster model democracy, there isn't really a lot of room for something of that nature. Plus, I don't think it's really in the Canadian instinct to do it. But yes, the U.S. make a big deal out of this speech, as they do for a lot of political speeches, whether it be by the President of the United States or otherwise. And I think something like this, especially with the concerns that the world has and the fact that there is a major global war going on right now, I think you have to have more of that pomp and circumstance. Bring out heroes, introduce military leaders and their families. Do whatever you can do to obviously link it back to the Ukrainians. I'm sure there will be obviously some people there of Ukrainian origin who either work for the government or are supporters of the president or the Democratic Party in general, and they'll be acknowledged. That's the right way to do it.
Yeah. It's too bad Biden's he's so low energy.
True. That's a big problem. He is very low energy, and obviously he doesn't have the oomph to him that that a Trump or an Obama or a Bush or anybody or Clinton or anyone else before him. But that's unfortunately what you have to play with. So he's got to then basically focus on the good people or the good things to discuss rather than make the focus about him. And I think that will succeed.
All right. Thank you, Michael Taube. Great to hear from you this week.
You bet. Always a pleasure, Rob. Take care.
Yep. So great to have the insight of a speechwriter for a world leader. Wrote speeches for Stephen Harper on with State of the Union address tonight. That's at 8:00. That's Michael Taube, syndicated columnist. Coming up next, Sueling Ching is the CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Back on the local business beat. Coming up next on City News.
Papa Jack was started 14 years ago, really by accident more than anything. A friend of mine had bought a grocery store. A popcorn machine was in there. He didn't want it. I ended up by buying it. My family thought I was nuts. When I first said, come and pick up this popcorn machine, my son said, what the heck for? I won't use exact words. But anyway, we started, and it just kept on growing and growing. But at the time, I was the only one selling popcorn in Ottawa. But we persevered as a family, and here we are. So it's been very, very rewarding for my family and myself. and to see our brand name Papa Jack. And Papa Jack came out of, I wanted something that was going to be very bilingual. So Papa, and then in Ontario, everybody called me Jack, even though my name is Jacques. In Quebec, it's fine, it's Jacques, but in Ontario, it was always Jack. So we married the two together, Papa, Jack. With the store that we have on Thurston Drive, it basically, the factory's in the back. If you come into the store, you can see how the popcorn is being made during the week. So it adds an extra layer of, you can see the sanitation, you can see how we do it. It's not like making popcorn. Most people thought when I started this, I was making popcorn in my garage or in my basement. No, never did. It was started in this building, in the back of the building, and then we kept growing and growing until what we have now. My daughter and my son came up with a brilliant idea to do a fundraiser online. So basically all people have to do is to register here, and we give them a special code number. And with that code number, they tell their friends or their neighbors, everybody, to buy online from us with that code number. And then at the end of each period, could be 2 weeks, could be a month, then we'll pay them a 20% of all the businesses that we got through that code number. One thing I'd like to say is thank you to all the Ottawa people who have supported us and support local businesses. It sometimes people, you know, they talk about buying locally. Now it becomes that much more important to buy locally, to support your local businesses, because not too many of them are going to survive this. We're fortunate that we're so far so good.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News,
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Sueling Ching is the CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Joins me this morning on City News to talk about the latest phase of reopening here in the province of Ontario. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, more importantly?
I'm not more importantly, but I'm fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Big day, right? How does it feel?
It is a big day.
Yeah.
It's a big day, and I think, you know, there's a new level of relief, optimism, energy, and how we move forward.
Okay. So what are your members saying about the ongoing challenges right now?
Well, there are many, you know. Right now, the big focus for us is around inspiring business, consumer and employee confidence.
Okay.
To get, you know, for businesses that they will continue to be supported by our levels of government, by the policies we put in place, and by the customers, that they're able to get the people that they need to work, right, to do the work, and that customers will come out and support them. Consumers, we know that they're lifting more restrictions with the vaccine passports, so there will be decisions for consumers to make around getting out and supporting our local businesses, and then the same with employees, that they will continue to engage with their employers and do the work necessary.
Yeah. So on the employer relationship, what are some of the issues there then?
Well, you know, it's been difficult for the employees because of so much uncertainty.
Yes.
Especially in a lot of those Main Street businesses that have been the hardest hit. And so we're looking for, you know, ways for employers to create resilient workplaces, for employees to be supported mentally, emotionally as they continue to move forward in their careers and try and build stable career paths.
Okay. In terms of ongoing access to assistance programs, aid programs, financial relief programs, how would you describe the state of that right now?
I would say that we need to continue to look closely at those hardest hit sectors. As you and I have talked about many times, Rob, it was easy to turn the economy off. It's not as easy to turn it back on, right?
Right.
It's,
yes.
It takes thought. It takes strategy. It takes continued support. Businesses are coming off of 2 years of uncertainty, opening and closing, increasing cost of business, supply chain pressures, and labor shortages. And so we need to be mindful of that, because they have really borne the brunt of trying to keep us safe and healthy. And then we have, of course, in Ottawa too, we've had further challenges with the 3-week-long occupation, and quite frankly, the aftermath of that. Right, in terms of confidence and optimism, and so I think there is an open and willingness and an acknowledgement from our government that we need to continue to focus on supporting these businesses, and there are some both funding but also policy decisions that can be made in order to support that. And then the second piece, Rob, as I've always said, is that the real power lies with us as a community and how we want to support our local businesses.
Yeah. I mean, a big challenge is just going to be, what's the behavior of the consumer going to be?
That's huge.
After all of this, right? What's the consumer going to feel like going into whatever kind of brick and mortar establishment? Whether that's a bookstore or a stationery store or a restaurant or whatever the case might be.
Or an event venue.
Or an event venue, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. And the thing, I think that what we're moving toward as a society is people being able to make those assessments for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because it's different for all of us. Am I more vulnerable, or do I have a family member that's more vulnerable? And so we'll make those decisions, and I think that's what's happening now is we're moving more toward that. And it's the same for businesses, right? Because they'll have choices to make now too, with the change in restrictions and how they want to operate their business.
Okay. Well, I hope it's a real turning point today, because it looked back in November that we were turning a corner, and then Omicron came, and nobody really saw that coming, but it arrived, and it really set a lot of our local businesses back. So I hope we're on the right path again here soon.
I agree with you, and it certainly did, but we have turned it around quickly, and I think there's every reason for us to be optimistic about the economy moving forward. But you're right, a lot of it lies in the hands of the consumer.
Thank you so much for the time. All the best.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye. Sueling Ching is the CEO of the Ottawa Board of Trade. Coming up next, the politics of Germany is not something we would normally talk about on the Rob Snow Show, but it has been such an extraordinary week in Germany because of everything that's been happening with Russia and Ukraine. Germany, the largest economy in Europe, really the dominant economy of Europe. So we'll talk about that coming up next with an expert from Carleton University. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, March 1st. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa, it's minus 13, some light snow coming down, and in Smiths Falls, minus 10. Here's what's making news this hour. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister is on her way to Poland to oversee the delivery of aid and weapons to Ukraine and discuss the refugee crisis. Melanie Joly will be at Poland's border with Ukraine to deliver $25 million worth of helmets, body armor, gas masks, and night vision gear to Ukraine. This comes as at least 10 individuals were killed in Kharkiv due to Russian aerial bombardment. As vaccine passports and capacity limits are lifted today in Ontario, the city's top doctor says not everyone will be comfortable with it. Dr. Vera Etches was on the Rob Snow Show earlier and wants people to understand that this is a time of transition and people need to respect each other and what individuals are comfortable with. Etches says Ottawa Public Health will continue to monitor things like hospitalizations and infection rates to make sure the case count doesn't spike again. The Ford government is introducing legislation that will require some workplaces to have naloxone kits on hand. The specific workplaces that will carry them include bars, nightclubs, and construction sites. Of the 2,500 people that died from an opioid overdose last year, 30% actually worked in construction. And in sports, the Ottawa Senators take on the reigning Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning, tonight in their first of a 5-game road trip. City News Time, 11:33. I'm Danielle Bain, and for News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
One of the really interesting angles of the Russia-Ukraine story is what it has meant for German politics in the course of the last week, where so many things have changed. And let's go over a series of incredible events with Professor Joan DeBardeleben. I'm trying my best with that. Expert European Russian affairs from Carleton University. Good morning, Professor.
Hello.
It's very nice to hear from you. Certainly no expert in German politics, so bear with me. I've tried to do a lot of reading over the last few days, just watching these events unfold. As I understand it, there's been this sort of doctrine or policy in German affairs, Ostpolitik. What is that?
Well, that's been a policy toward the eastern region, which was based on a kind of premise that through engagement you could bring reform in these eastern countries, and rather than just blocking yourself off entirely and not having relations. And it really goes back to the period when Germany was divided, and it was based on this premise that through developing kind of economic interdependence and through trying to encourage reform in countries that maybe yet weren't totally democratic or market-oriented, that you could help to promote those kinds of change. And I think what we're seeing with even starting with the Crimean annexation in 2014, but even more so now, of course, this doesn't seem to have worked very well with Russia.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing some really dramatic changes in terms of German foreign policy. I mean, these are really significant changes that we've seen this week. The other kind of historical factor that affects this is, of course, the legacy of World War II, and the Germans in the post-war period being very reluctant to take on a strong military role because it could evoke memories of past problems.
I've heard it described as being a pacifist state.
Well,
would you say that?
Well, yeah, to a certain degree, and it's changed a bit over time. I mean, that doesn't mean that Germany has no military capacity. Of course, it has a defensive capacity. Mm-hmm. But there's been a kind of general acceptance across the political spectrum that military equipment would not be, or certainly not lethal military equipment, wouldn't be exported particularly to conflict zones, because that might, seem to put Germany as a kind of background factor contributing to those conflicts. And this is what's changed just this week, that Germany has actually committed to sending this kind of military assistance to Ukraine.
The anti-tank weapons and the Stinger missiles.
That's right.
Yeah.
And what's really striking about it is that some of the political parties, like the Greens, who hold that party, the foreign minister is actually a member of the Green Party, are accepting this and supporting this kind of a shift. So I think it's just the scope of the violation of territorial integrity of Ukraine, of all the accepted norms of post-war international law that has evoked this transformation.
The new Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, also announced his government will spend, through a special fund, 100 billion euros this budget year to modernize the German armed forces. What do you make of that?
Well, that's also significant. I mean, it's in the context that some years ago, the NATO members, of which Germany, of course, is a member of that alliance, set as a target to contribute 2% of their gross domestic product to the military structure that would support the NATO alliance. And many countries, including Canada and Germany, have not achieved that. And so with this statement, that signals that Germany is setting itself on a trajectory to make that commitment. It's been, of course, a grievance of the United States, which has contributed a larger share to the military support for NATO. So I think it does reflect, again, the same kind of realization that Germany really can't avoid being a geopolitical actor. I mean, the geopolitics is very real in Europe now, and that Germany can't just stand aside and be an observer, but has to be a much more active participant in terms of addressing those challenges.
Okay. Suspending or canceling the permit for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, how significant is that?
Well, it's very significant in the medium to long term. So this putting a stop on the certification process for this pipeline, which was to open relatively soon because it's basically completed, means that Germany is rethinking, along with the rest of Europe, the level of its dependence on energy from Russia, energy imports from Russia. The EU overall imports about between around 45% of its natural gas from Russia. That was in 2020, it was 44%. And a lot of its oil from Russia, about a quarter of its oil from Russia. And of course, this is a very significant portion in terms of natural gas. Germany is even a bit higher than that. And so with the non-certification or the stopping of certification for that new pipeline, it means that there's the signal, the direction to try to wean Europe off of this heavy dependence on Russian energy, fossil fuel sources, which of course goes along also with the commitment of the EU and Germany toward a shift toward renewable energy, which is the long-term goal.
Okay. The departure of Angela Merkel, who, as I understand, some called her the Putin whisperer. She had a way of communicating with him, from what I gather. How much is she missed right now, do you think?
Well, I mean, of course, she not only was important because she seemed to be able, she communicated with Putin, but of course she wasn't able to persuade him to change his position after the Crimean annexation.
Right.
But she was certainly also very important as the preeminent leader in Europe, in the European Union. And I think that's the leader of among the member state leaders. She was a very influential factor, and there were a whole bunch of crises that she was present for to try to see things through. So there has been a lot of speculation as to whether there will be a big gap in leadership in the European Union, in particular, with Merkel's basic retirement from that political position. And we're seeing other leaders, I think, try to rise to the occasion. Of course, Emmanuel Macron from France has been quite visible. And it remains to be seen whether the new German Chancellor will be able to fill her shoes.
What was your impression of him, Mr. Scholz?
I think he seems to be doing a good job so far, and he seems to be an experienced individual that has the qualifications to play a very important role. But of course, he will have to gain the level of respect and kind of have people follow his lead, and that will take some time, I think. But of course, this crisis is putting everything on a faster trajectory than it was before.
Okay. This reliance on Russia for gas supplies to Germany, now that is compromised, what are the alternatives for keeping the lights on in that country?
Yeah, it's still not clear to what degree that is compromised, because this Nord Stream 2 pipeline that is now not going to be certified at this point was not actually in operation.
Right.
But of course, there is the possibility that Russia could either cut back on its deliveries, could place obstacles to them, or I suppose cut them off, rather drastically. So the Germans and the Europeans do have to have a kind of backup plan in place. And from what I understand, they are, planning that with the reserves that they have in place and the reliance on other energy resources, that they could cover the deficit. However, with some difficulty, of course. They have to get through the winter because natural gas is very important to heating. But they do have some reserves that should allow them to do that. They're planning to build liquefied natural gas terminals. Germany's got 2 that they've just announced they're planning to build, which could bring in these energy resources in the medium term from other locations. And then, of course, there's the question of whether the planned reduction in their use of coal can go forward at the same pace if this occurs. And Germany's also planning to close its last remaining nuclear power plants by the end of 2022. So, there's been some discussion, would that have to be delayed? I think there'd be a reluctance to do that, but it would be something else that might be on the table.
Okay. Thank you for your time, Professor.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Bye. Professor Joan DeBardeleben from Carleton University. We'll be right back with Tanya Hill, director, Tappa Hair Salon. Her hair salon has been really affected, as you can imagine, by all the lockdown measures, and this is the first time that her business has been allowed to fully reopen in 2 years. We'll be right back. This is City News.
So Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre has been around since 1982, and it's here to serve residents of Ward 13. So our focus is on helping to reduce poverty in this community, as well as empowering residents to find resilience within themselves. So one of the new focuses of our centre is around food programming. So you'll notice today when we go around on a little tour that we have a number of food programs here at the centre. So one being obviously our emergency food program, which is really great. So residents can come and access food when they are in need. We also have a number of food-based social enterprises here at Rideau Rockcliffe as well. So one being the Ottawa Good Food Box, another being Market Mobile. One of our new initiatives that started this year as response to COVID is called Good Food on the Move, and it's a click and collect online store, and we have 7 pickup locations throughout the city. More sort of local here for Ward 13 residents, we've also started a free produce market as well. So community members can come on Wednesdays and Fridays and be able to access additional free fruits and vegetables.
Social Harvest Ottawa is one of the social enterprises here at the Rideau Rockcliffe Community Resource Centre. We operate this great urban greenhouse, and our work is not only to grow nutritious and delicious food, but also to nourish communities with community members here in Ward 13 and beyond. The greenhouse is a year-round project. We're a team of 4 employees working here. We have 2 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. We focus on growing microgreens from late fall to early spring, and hothouse crops in the summertime, such as tomatoes and cucumbers.
The Mission Food Truck we're in our 5th week of collaborating with them to come visit our center, and we just got in on it at the right time. They were looking for new communities to branch out to. They said absolutely. Right now they're funded through donations. They travel around Ottawa and just give out delicious, fresh, hot food to people as well. We have at our center the Ottawa Good Food Box, as well as the Market Mobile. So Ottawa Good Food Box has been around for 25 years, and Market Mobile is a little younger, started in 2014. So they both have the mission and the mandate of making fresh food more accessible and affordable in neighborhoods that lack access to a grocery store. So I think the greatest need that we've seen as a result of the pandemic in our community is people that we maybe have never needed to access our services before, right? So a lot of people
people have had, layoffs. Maybe they're just not able to work because they have to stay home with their children, over the summer, that sort of thing. So we've definitely seen the need go out, particularly for our food programming, as well as some of our counseling services as well. So it's a heavy time for people emotionally.
Voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's a huge day for our next guest with reopening again happening in Ontario. Tanya Hill is the owner of Tappa, hair salon and beauty bar in the Carlingwood Mall, also president of the Ontario Professional Hairstylists Association. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Rob?
I'm good. Big day.
It is a big day, considering that since COVID started, the hairstyling industry has either been closed or working at limited capacities. So this will be the first time full capacity since March 2020, I guess.
Wow. The first time since March of 2020, 2 full years. The first time you've been allowed to be fully reopened in 2 years.
Yeah, we had our board meeting last night, the Ontario Professional Hairstylists Association, and that's what we were speaking of. And we had a lot of questions. I realized that, in February when they made the announcement that we would reopen a little bit earlier, February 17th, and if everything went well, March 1st, the vaccine certificate would be a thing of the past and the restrictions would be lifted, all based on if the chief medical officer decided to do so, and then all the public health units. What I found interesting last night was nobody on the board was 100% sure if we were moving forward and where personal care fell in. So I do feel that I know that there's a million things going on and, the world is crazy and COVID isn't just the front page news right now. But I do feel the communication has been somewhat inefficient because everybody on that board was left questioning, are we at full capacity? Is it going forward? Because typically there's some sort of technical briefing, some slide decks that are shared with the stakeholders so you can get out to your members. And none of that happened. And we were emailing yesterday our different contacts, and nobody replied. And even the local health units, we've been sending them emails since January, even asking for updates on what the recommendations were for modified stage 2 as opposed to the stage 2 from the year prior. And we haven't had those emails answered from January either. So I do think that obviously everybody's going on the assumption that it's, full steam ahead today. But we actually haven't had any of that in confirmation. And it's not on their website clearly identifying the personal care. So we are going to move forward, but we do feel that a little bit more clear communication, not just for us, but also for consumers, because we need to get that confidence back with the consumer. Yeah. So it'd be nice if that message was being shared, because we have to remember that personal care was never a part of the vaccine certificate, which was a bit unusual considering we were considered so high risk. So we never were in that. So we never were taking the passports at any point anyways. So now it's, I guess it's just full steam ahead and everybody is reopening at full capacity, which is everybody's very excited, but just kind of cautiously optimistic because we haven't had official communication of that.
Right. So what does that mean in a shop like yours? Full capacity, what does that mean? Give me a sense of what that looks like.
Yeah, so we would have 10 hairstylists operating then. Before, that's the other thing too, I'm assuming that the social distancing has been removed. So before we had the barriers in place so that you could either work on, taking different shifts and different amounts of people in. That's the other thing. We're assuming the barriers are allowed to all come down now. If they are, we'd be back to the full 10 hairstylists then.
Okay. And do you expect it to be busy today? We're speaking before you're open, so are you expecting a busy day today? Or?
Right. We should be steady. Everything is we're going to have to wait to see what consumer confidence is like as well. So I don't think it's like a tap and everything gets turned on again. We're anticipating being busier, but again, I do think that there are going to be some consumers that, you know, would prefer the barrier up, or would prefer having the spacing, or would prefer knowing that the vaccine certificates are being checked. So that's going to have to be a bridge that everybody's going to have to cross as we get to it, and just kind of deal with it on a day-to-day basis.
Right. So you were never required to ask for the vaccine passport. Is that what you said?
Right. Okay, so it was left as you could opt in.
Okay.
And that in itself became confusing because the public knew that we weren't a part of it. So you would have had to educate all of your clients that, yes, we're opting into the program, we're going to be checking it. So, you know, considering we were so high risk the whole time and always the industry that was closed down, like the gyms and restaurants, it was kind of unusual that we weren't a part of it. We kind of assumed we would have been. And then in this last lockdown, that's the first time that personal care has not been included with the gyms and restaurants in being locked down. We were just on reduced capacities again. So again, you just kind of wonder what changes, or, you know, what science, what evidence, what research have they been looking at, because we are still unclear even to this last time. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody was very happy we weren't closed down. But what changed that, you know, us being so high risk, we were allowed to stay open, and we weren't a part of the vaccine certificate, but we were allowed to remain open in that last closure. So just, I mean, you know, a lot of questions still, and I guess we're just going to take it day by day. But everybody is very ready to be open and working and doing it safely, but we would love some communication with consumer. I have sat on some round tables with different MPPs and local MPPs, and I think that they're very aware that's going to be something we all have to work really hard on, is communicating to consumers and getting them feeling safe to go back into all these environments that have been so restricted and so many regulations.
So this wasn't supposed to happen for another 2 weeks under the original plan. It was supposed to be the middle of March before things got back into full swing.
Yes.
So it's 2 weeks sooner, but do you think you could have done this even earlier?
I think looking back at, you know, the fact that we haven't had the vaccine passports in our industry, we really haven't had the cases. I mean, we're not doing the testing we were. I feel like we probably could have done it a bit sooner based on all of those things that aren't happening. I mean, we're not testing, we're not doing the contact tracing. So I feel like we probably would have been able to have done it sooner, but I mean, March 1st today is better than March 14th, and
right.
Let's hope that that this continues, and it's going to be a slow process. We've got to rebuild the confidence and get people feeling confident about coming back into stores, salons, restaurants, gyms. So what is that going to look like? I guess time will tell, but we know that even with our Ontario Professional Hairstylists Association, that 2022, we have a lot of work ahead of us. Just in our industry, with lots of things that have been left hanging. Of course, with the wind down of College of Trades and the new restart of the Skilled Trades Agency Ontario, we are going to be busy. So we have lots of work to do, and we want to work hard with the officials to, you know, make our industry really sustainable and thriving again.
You know, you hear so many stories about people leaving the hospitality industry because they just, you know, they can't deal with constant open, close. What's it been like in the beauty industry? Same deal? Like,
yes, yeah. I haven't talked to, I don't think, one industry that isn't suffering from lack of employees, lack of finding people to work. I mean, our industry, I think a lot of people unfortunately did go underground. And I've probably found that they can survive like that. So we have lost a lot of hairstylists due to that, and we haven't been that attractive to new hairstyles to come into for 2 years. So apprentices looking for new trades to enter we're not that attractive knowing that we've been open, closed. How are they going to, get their hours? How are they going to get their competencies and their hands-on training, attract new clients? So that's definitely another concern as we look into the future of hairstyling is A, we need to hopefully bring some of those hairstylists back that have probably gone underground. And then B, continue to, because we're one of the biggest trades. We're 32,000, so we're right up with electricians and auto mechanics. So we need those new apprentices coming into the trade all the time. And I know there's a big focus on trades in general. We need some help with the hairstyling industry to bring those people in. I know they are looking at foreign workers and trying to do a better job of that. We're going to need that because there's definitely a shortage.
Okay. I'm so happy this day has finally arrived for you. You're a real
amazing.
You're a real survivor, Tanya. And
thank you so much. And you guys have been great. And we certainly appreciate you guys always reaching back out and listening and sharing our message with everybody. The hairstyling industry needs support, and we're looking to rebuild and get strong again. So you guys have been great, and thank you for always reaching out and sharing our message.
Look, all the best. Okay. Thank you.
Have a great day.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com